everybody. This is episode 15. This is the first time that we are joined by two people, not
On
one.
your quinceañera.
On your quinceañera, when we became oh no, that's for girls. When you become a big girl. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, we can start with you, Jeffrey.
I'm Army Specialist Geoffrey Quevedo. I was with the 10th Mountain Division out of Fort Drum, New York. 371 cap. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. 371 cap, I guess. That's all I got. That's how I got.
All right. What about you, big boy?
All right. Javier Sanchez. I got out as a sergeant. I was in Marine Corps from 2011 to 2019. Hoorah. I was with a couple different units. I was with 3rd Tracks. I was with 3rd LAR. I was with 2-7. That's where me and Caesar deployed. And then I went to Headquarters Regiment. And then I spent some time at CLB 15. And then I ended my tour in 3rd Lab in Camp Pendleton. So
damn,
cool.
dude. I didn't know you were in that many units. That's fucking wild. I thought you were like
yeah, dude, they passed me around, dude.
Yeah, like a little dirty girl. So Jeffrey, or this question goes for both of you guys. What would you say motivated you guys to join the military, and why did you pick that service?
Jeff?
I was gonna say, so who's going first? Yeah,
you go first, brother.
Well, I joined the United States Army, obviously the best one. But honestly, my brother-in-law, so my sister is like 5-6 years older than me. And my brother-in-law back in the day was dating my sister, and he joined as a 21 Bravo combat engineer in the Army, and he was dating my sister through basic training and his unit, and then he deployed and all that, and you know, I thought it was like cool, you know, like hearing like when he was in like in basic training, or like when he was deployed.
Yeah.
And then when he came back, obviously you saw, I guess that was like my firsthand look on the effects of war and stuff, and it was always looked at as oh, that's just crazy Rigo because he's a war veteran, and
yeah,
blah blah. That's all everybody ever categorized it as. And I'm like, oh, okay, like yeah, obviously you saw some stuff, and he was still dating my sister, and you know, and that's when I was really getting to know him. And I'm like, dude, that'd be pretty cool, you know. Ever since he went even to basic training, I was like, dude, that'd be pretty cool to be a soldier in the United States Army.
Yeah.
And you know, and he told me, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly, the in between, and yeah, obviously he deployed in 0405. He did the first raid of Fallujah with 1st Mardu Marines, and again, he didn't sugarcoat anything. He told me the truth. He told me straight up, like, hey man, you need to go supply. You need to go supply. Like,
oh shit.
I don't want you doing. I don't want you doing this. Like, I don't want you doing that. Like, and
did you can you be honest about this? Did you also think like, oh, it's just a fucking the craziness that the military or the war, you know, that it brings out? Did you also think that as well? Or
I did think of the war, especially obviously him being a part of it. Obviously, that's all he knew was the war.
Yeah.
So when he was like, "Oh, I was in combat. I did this. I did that," and I'm like, "All right, well, you know, if I ever do get out of the Army, I want to be, you know, a police officer or like
sure
SWAT. That was always like my. I always wanted to do something high speed, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll go MP. And obviously my brother-in-law and his buddies that I talked to were like, nah, man, you don't want to go MP. Everybody makes fun of those dudes and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And you want to do something safer. You want to do something this and that. You know, like, you know, supply. You know, that we can hook us up with stuff and blah. You know, he was really just trying to keep me away from combat, and
yeah,
and obviously being my brother-in-law, he was doing that, and when when I got to MEPS and I heard the job Cavalry Scout, I'm like, you know what? Hell yeah, dude! Like I'll do that. You know, comms, radio, and not, you know, mechanized, all this other stuff. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah! Like I'm down. You know,
Yeah.
light infantry stuff, mechanized comms, like all this other stuff that comes with it. Reconnaissance, obviously, that's what the scouts were known for back in the day and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, cool. That'd be cool. You know, something of everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Damn, dude.
and I want that, and I want that, and I want to do all that.
Did
That's
you?
that's what I chose.
Yeah. Did you ever think that you were gonna go to Iraq or anything like that? Did you ever think you were gonna see
Oh,
combat before?
I knew it would be a possibility.
Yeah.
Especially this was back in 2010 when I was picking all this,
Yeah.
and I was like, yeah, let's go. You know, let's try it out. Let's do it. And that's when they're like, oh, you're gonna be at Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic training, and it's gonna be OSET, so one station unit training. So you're just gonna be there the whole time, and it was during Christmas time and stuff. Yeah, so it was October 4th, 2010 that I left for basic training, and then I graduated in February of 2011, mid February sometime of 2011, and yeah, obviously in basic training, that's where the drill sergeants were like, hey man, like, you know, where, you know, they were like E6s, E7s and stuff. They're like, oh, we've done combat deployments, light infantry stuff, and blah blah blah. Like this stuff is real. Like,
Yeah.
don't you think it's Call of Duty? Don't you do this? And obviously, a lot of people did think it would be like easy and stuff like that. And obviously, I had my brother-in-law's experience in the back of my head. Obviously, clearly, you can't picture it anyways, but
Right.
I had my brother-in-law's experience in the back of my head, and his army buddies that I talked to and met personally, and obviously I saw the effects of the Iraq War on my brother-in-law and his army buddies and stuff, and I'm like, no, this is serious. So I always took it as like, no, this is serious. Like,
Right.
you
You ever
know,
had that kind of like that stupid mentality of like, oh, we're just gonna go
no,
fucking play
yeah,
war, you know?
You never took it lightly.
Yeah.
It was never obviously you can ask Javier like this. It was obviously the kind of person that I am. I bullshit and I talk shit and all this, but when that came about, like yeah, I saw all the seriousness of my brother-in-law and his army buddies, and when everybody was like, "Oh, this is my first job. Oh my god, yeah, the army. I just did it to get away from the house and blah blah blah." I'm like, no, I'm like, honestly, I've been wanting to join the army since I was like 10 years old. You know, since my
Yeah.
brother-in-law came into my into the picture, and I wanted to be a soldier this whole time.
Yeah, you know what's crazy that you say that is like I don't know, like we'll get to your reason why you joined here in a bit, Sanchez, but like some of the guys that I talked to previously, that like you're saying, some people just don't have opportunities, you know what I mean? Like not everybody, this isn't something that like everybody's like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is like, for me, for example, I didn't think I was gonna join the military. I always fucking respected it, and I was like, God damn, like these motherfuckers are. I was always like a big World War II, like holy shit, these motherfuckers put their life on the line for, the right cause, obviously. But I mean, it's crazy how everybody just has their own distinct reason when it comes to joining the service, whether it be escaping a shitty ass environment, shitty city, where there's not a lot of opportunity. Where I'm from, there wasn't a lot of opportunity. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for growth. College sucks. Jobs terrible. It's a thing where a lot of people, that was a good escape for a lot of younger kids where I'm from. What would you say was your reason for joining there, Sanchez?
I guess from like a younger age, I kind of always enjoyed the idea of the military and stuff. I don't know. I've had uncles and cousins and stuff who are in the military, from like the National Guard, army, like the active duty army, Marines and stuff like that. And then as I got a little bit older, didn't really know much about the differences in branches and stuff.
Sure.
And then like my probably freshman or sophomore year, when the recruiters are coming around and stuff, they kind of, you know, they're all peddling their shit.
Yeah.
And the Marines just spoke to me the most, I guess. You know what I mean? It was,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how it was in every school, but for us, like the Marines would always like try to recruit the athletes and stuff. And the Army would just fucking anybody, you know, but the Marines were always like, nah, like we don't want you. We know who we want and shit. And
Yeah, because they were trying to
I
make
kind of
a
like
quota.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's completely. I
Yeah.
think they have like completely different sort of like methods. I think it also depends on the time frame. For example, when you joined, right, or for like when Jeremy Caldwell joined, or where fucking Jason Menendez, who are all guys who have been on the podcast now, when they joined, it's when shit was going down, dude. Like people were fucking going left and right, and you know, some people were not coming back. Some people were not coming back, right in the head, kind of like your brother-in-law, or they were coming back, but there were some effects, side effects to war, as there is. And I think they were just processing, because I used to hear stories when they were processing people fucking fast, dude. Waivers left and right,
Yeah. And then but yeah, like how Jeff was saying, we have one of my cousins, my cousin Cecil. He was 101st Airborne Infantry, and he was like in the initial push to Fallujah and stuff, like back in the day. So he, you know, went through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And then when he came back, he obviously like had PTSD and stuff, and not everyone in the family knew how to interact with him and stuff. And then I was still in high school, and then so like I would like, you know, try to talk to him and stuff, but you know, I don't really know how to ask him questions, you know, when I was younger.
Sure.
And then after I had been in the military for a little while, I kind of knew how much you could ask him and get away with, but you know how to talk to him, how to navigate. And yeah, like pretty much it was like me and one other cousin that were the only ones he would ever talk to. Other than that, he would just kind of sit in the corner at the party and just, you know, be there and shit, you know. But yeah, it's tough when you don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Jeffrey, do you think it's like do you think it's easier to talk to people when it's obviously when it's somebody that you can somewhat relate to, especially when it comes to like service members or vets, instead of like family members or like media outlets, for example, like we were saying earlier, when somebody puts a fucking mic in your face or a camera, it's kind of
Honestly,
like...
it's absolutely. I say this all the time. Obviously, obviously later we'll figure it out. But through my own experience of counseling and all this other stuff, like it's intimidating for a lot of people to get like sat down and like meet me in my office and like let's talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, to where like obviously alcohol and drugs will obviously affect veterans differently, but you can get a lot more out of people just shooting the shit and like having some drinks and relaxing. And you know, like then it'll be like, oh, you know, like, hey man, you know, like yeah, you know, we talk shit all day long, you know, Marines, Army, but like like yeah, you know, again, Javier, we met each other like 5 years ago, and obviously he never knew anything besides the stuff that I post. And obviously again, it is hard for a lot of people to even ask,
Yeah.
you know, even service members, even regular civilians or whatever. And two, obviously some people, not me, because clearly I'm a social butterfly and I can talk all day, but it's hard for a lot of people to actually talk about
Yeah. Yeah, man, honestly,
stuff like that, because again
go ahead, go ahead.
again cultural norms, and even who you are as a person, you know, obviously as men, as Hispanics, as whatever, like, you know, we're meant to like, oh, be a macho, you know, dust it off, man, be a macho,
Yeah.
like, you know, oh, it's in the past, you know, like why haven't you gone over it, like you should, blah, like
Yeah.
I am. Who said I wasn't? Who said I was doing this? It's just you don't understand this situation. But obviously that's how it gets masked. It gets masked on like you're not over it yet. Like, okay, well, have you lost an arm and a leg? Like, have you done this? Like, have you done that?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to pinpoint or try to pick at somebody's life that you don't know nothing about, and then obviously everybody's guilty of that,
Yeah.
and you don't know what they're going through, you know, until like you see it, you're there, you're around it, you know, you'll see me in a wheelchair, you know, at my house, like you'll see me fall, slip, and I can't tie my shoes, I can't I can't cut meat, stuff like that. Like, hey man, can you help me cut my meat? Like, hey man, can you help me tie my shoe? Like,
Yeah.
obviously you're like, what? Okay. Like, yeah, I'll help you. Like, obviously, uh, what your norms and my norms, everybody's norms are obviously different,
Oh,
and that's
different.
what,
Yeah. So
yeah,
so would you say like that just being Mexican and being a part of this culture that's like you were saying is very fucking macho and broad and just tuck it all away, fucking don't let anything come up, like you're not a bitch, you're not a fucking pussy, like you have to put up this this front, I guess. And don't get me wrong, like um I guess I understand why, because they want you to be the man, they want you to be the fucking, el chingon, right? But would you say,
absolutely.
yeah, would you say that that made it like a little bit more difficult to kind of actually um, deal with the shit that you were dealing with around your family and actually being able to express yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like the way you took things was like if it came at you, like let's just say like a rock is being thrown at you, you just swat it. You just keep swatting it,
Yeah,
and you just keep moving forward, swat it, keep moving forward, but you don't address it.
right.
You just take it and you keep taking it, and again, looking back at it now, again, almost 9 years after I got blown up, I look back at it like when I was trying to sweep it under the rug, one, because I wanted to be strong for my family, I wanted to be strong for everybody. I wanted to show that like obviously this wasn't going to get the best of me.
Right.
And then I was trying to be strong for my partner. I was trying to be strong for my buddies. I was trying to be strong for everybody else, I guess, and for myself,
Of
honestly.
course.
I wanted to prove to myself that this wasn't going to take over me. This wasn't going to get the better of me. Like I'm better than this, and I want to walk and I want to do this. And back when again I wasn't sleeping because of pain or because of nightmares or because of random things that would happen. I'm like, geez, why can't I sleep? Why can't I do this? Like, why isn't my pain controlled? I'm like, oh wait, I forgot. I told the doctors that there's nothing wrong with me. So I was like lying to the doctors. I was lying to this and that to speed up my recovery. I was
Yeah.
trying to be better faster when obviously it was just hurting me because that's when I was sleeping 2-3 hours a night, if that,
Jeez.
and and uh,
Do you think that
and
sort
I
of
was
mindset kind of delayed your whole healing process? Like, do you think if you would have just been a little bit more open about it and more upfront with the doctors, you would have probably had a like a, I don't want to say more enjoyable, but you kind of get what I'm saying, like a better process when it came to just dealing with the shit that you're dealing with.
honestly, it was pretty fast for the most part. My healing process, recovery, almost walking process was pretty fast in general, and I guess I was just trying to speed up everything. I was
Yeah.
trying to speed up the surgery, speed up the physical therapy, speed up all this. Like, when can I walk? When can I do this? When can I do that? And honestly, again, I was cut at my ankle, on my foot, and so I remember the first time I was walking, or I was starting to put pressure on my stump, what we call it, so the end of my leg. I couldn't put pressure on it. They kept telling me like put pressure, like step on the floor and put pressure,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do it. I couldn't shift my weight from my right leg to my left without it hurting so much.
Jeez.
And they're like take a step, and I couldn't physically, I couldn't do it with the pain, and eventually I started crying. And again, what pissed me off is like I was there crying, moping, and my my physical therapist, wants to tell me, as I'm like mid crying novella tears, um, um, like, oh, I know what it's like not to walk. I had a broken ankle once,
Bruh.
and I was like clearly mid crying and first time stepping and everything,
I see. Way.
and I was like, how could you know? Like, you would never know what's going on, like,
Yeah.
eventually your ankle got better, and there I go rolling off in my wheelchair,
Yeah.
all pissed off, rolling
That
away,
shit
and
struck
then
a nerve.
you know, I eventually ended up apologizing to her the next day, and I told her, I'm like, hey, like, you know, I'm sorry for saying that, and she was like, no, I'm sorry for saying that too. I realized, you know, saying that what happened, and I'm like, yeah, okay, like,
What was this physical?
so we're good. After that
Was this physical
physical
therapist
therapy, yeah.
like a military physical therapist that they've dealt with this sort of thing before, or was it?
She worked for the VA in Palo Alto. I mean, that's all I
Oh
know.
shit!
I never really asked at that point, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Jeez. Um. So I guess we can backtrack a little bit to, before your
yeah,
your,
being
your
blown up, I guess.
yeah,
Yeah,
being blown
speaking
the
about
fuck
being
up.
blown up, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're the editing king, so you
Shit,
can,
I'm gonna have to fucking cha
Yeah,
cha
let's talk
cha.
about your recovery first. Yeah, huh?
Yeah, I'm gonna
So
yeah.
It's Benjamin Button over here.
so so I graduated basic training mid February of 2011, um, and I deployed to Fort Drum, New York. Um, I deployed to Fort Drum, New York, or deployed. I got stationed in Fort Drum, New York,
Yeah.
and as soon as we got there, they're like, you know, there was like six of us ish from basic training, and they're like, all right, you two are going, you know, with this company, and you four are going to this company. And they're like, oh, third squadron, 371. Like, okay, like all you six are going to be deployed here pretty soon, you know, in the next month and a half, and
Jeez.
or the next month. They told us next month. To be honest, they're like next month, and we're like, all right, you know, cool. Obviously this is what
That's what.
we
Yeah.
signed up for. Again, I've been always the person that, like, you know, take a seat and get comfortable. You know, like, it's gonna suck. Might as well take it. You know,
Settle in. Yeah.
and so I get there. I don't even unpack really my stuff from basic training. I just unpack, you know, the essentials of, like, you know, two uniforms and like two PTs, and I don't even buy sheets for my barrack room. Just like one like blanket, and I use like my sleeping bag stuff, you know, that was assigned to me. And because I'm like, I'm deploying in a month, why am I going to buy everything? Why am I going to buy a TV? Why am I going to buy this?
Yeah.
Like, I bought a laptop because obviously being deployed, you know, I'm like, okay, at least I'll have a laptop, and I won't have my phone.
Yeah. Throw some porn in there
And
or something.
yeah, I mean, to each their own, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Whatever.
and and uh and yeah, man, you know, I got there, I was a new guy, and obviously everybody, you know, was trying to, like, you know, roughhouse the new guys. You know, there was like six of us there, and one of my buddy that came with us, his name was Riddick, specialist Riddick. He came in as a specialist. He came in at 32, almost 33 years old in the army. He
Oh
came
boy.
from basic training. He came from basic training with me, but he had a degree and everything, so he came in as a specialist. You know, and he came, you know, whatever, and when they took him out, and they were like, "Hey, who would be best for first platoon?" You know, out of all the, you know, the five other guys that came with us in the same troop, and he was like, honestly, like Quevedo and this other guy Chinchetti. Well, they had to take three. They had to split us up anyway. So he was like, "Oh,
Mm.
Quevedo and then Chinchetti." And that's when they're like, "All right, first platoon here comes with, you know, Riddick, Quevedo, and Chinchetti," and then these other guys went to the other platoons. And obviously he was a specialist, so he got, you know, not the new guy speech, but, like, you know, because he outranked some of the other guys, whatever,
Yeah.
because he was technically an E4 already. And when they're like, "Oh, private, like, do this, do that," and I'm like, "Fool, like, you're a private too, man. Like, you're a private too. Like, you
Yeah.
know, I wasn't playing." Believe me, like, my brother-in-law and his friends, like, told me, you know, all about the hazing, all about all that. Like, so I'm like, nah, I'm good. Like, if we're gonna all do it, like, let's all do it. You know, like, yeah, it ain't gonna be like this. And then the first PT came. This first PT came, and this other specialist. He always like, oh, I'm specialist this, I'm specialist that, and blah blah blah. He always, like, gave the new guys, or obviously all the E3s and below, like, hard time.
Yeah.
They always gave us a hard time. And then here we come to the PT test. And here I come, like the fresh dude out of basic training and stuff, first PT test, and I get like a 298, 299, like on my PT test. I ran 13 1301, I think, my 2 mile before deployment. And
Damn.
I even told my LT, I'm like, man, dude, you couldn't even give me those like 2 seconds, like give me
Yeah.
a 12:58, 12:59, and he's like, nope, 1301. And I'm like, no, I know I made it, obviously. I'm like, because he buzzed it, we go back
Yeah.
on this all the time. He buzzed it late, so I'm like, whatever. And so, anyways, I scored the highest PT score. So after that, like some of the guys were like, all right, fool, the new guy, he means business and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Obviously they haze me for that too. I'm like, all right, motherfuckers, like, okay, like there's no winning. But
Sounds like 2-7.
luckily, obviously that's where I gathered that it was the camaraderie, it was the bullshitting, and cool, it's obviously them accepting you and stuff, obviously, because then you got the ones that whined and the other new guys that whined and complained and like, oh my god, this, and like, all right, well, we ain't gonna be cool with you, we'll be cool with this guy.
Yeah.
So then there it comes to deploying, and obviously that's where they give you a list on like what to take, whatever. And I remember when we got to Afghanistan, we had to, obviously, like the military, you got to unpack everything for like 100 times.
Oh
And
boy.
then so one of my squad leaders sees my machete, and he was like, "Why do you have a machete?"
It's
And
not on
I'm
the
like,
packing list, right?
"Because you never know, sir." And he was like, "Why do you have a machete?" I'm like, "Because you never know, sir." I'm like, I guarantee it, we're gonna use it." And he was like, "All right, put it away." So we get there, whatever. We transition. We get to CAF. We go to our place, and then the first area we were at, it was honestly nothing but brush and trees and debris, and it was pretty much like Fresno, man. It was like nothing but agriculture, nothing but like pomegranates and all this other weed fields, like old poppy fields, like stuff like that.
When'd you go
And
over there, man? Like what year? What year did you go over there?
have you not been listening? I said 2011, so.
Oh, my bad. My bad. Perdón.
So,
Perdóname,
no,
perdóname.
yeah, I forgot. I guess I left that part out myself. But we deployed in April, first week of April. I think
Uh-huh.
April 2nd or April first week of April, sometime in April.
Okay.
We officially deployed. We left the States, and then we went there, and so we were replacing 101st Airborne. Um, and obviously they showed us the ropes. They obviously, being the new troop, they try to take us on the rigorous, like, oh, jumping walls, doing this and that, obviously to show us like how they were avoiding, walking the main roads, never taking the same path twice, kind of thing,
Yeah.
because they were planting IEDs left and right. And that was when I remember they asked, like, jokingly, when we first got there, like, oh, well, we've lost this many guys. We've had this many guys being amputees and combat wounded and blah, blah, from IEDs. Like, all right, so who's going to be the mine detector? Who's going to be the point man? And I'm like, fuck it, I'll do it. Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, all right. Like, I was in my platoon, at least I was the only one, because they broke us up according to platoons, like platoon, top platoon over there. And I'm like, I'll do it. Like, I'll try it. Like, let's see what's going on. And so I was with their point man when they were escorting us around and getting to know the ropes and stuff like that. And yeah, like, again, I with all the fuck they call that now, shit, the bulletproof vest. I don't know the high speed shit, but the
Black.
bulletproof
Yeah,
vest,
your flak, yeah.
the flak. I had my machete right here. And I have pictures of it. And, like, again, obviously, I don't need to explain myself to my army buddies, but everybody would give me shit like, "Oh, you're the Mexican with the machete and cartel and blah blah blah,"
Yeah.
and yo Mexican blah blah blah. So I'm like, all right, like we'll see. So as soon as the 101st left and we started going on our own patrols, we started going through like thick brush, very thick pomegranate trees, very thick fruit trees, everything you can think of. Because obviously we're doing this, we're trying to throw them off, you know, on our
Right.
paths. And I'm just shoot, you know, cutting it. Obviously, we're split into two sections, so
Yeah.
Alpha section and Bravo section. I was in Alpha section at the time, and we're like, oh, cool. Like everybody was walking behind me, all cool and stuff, and Bravo was like over there, like, you know, fighting
Yeah.
trees, snapping twigs, and stuff like that, because obviously they're taking their own route.
Yeah.
And eventually, my buddy in Bravo section ends up ordering his own machete.
Smart man.
So again, we were both um, we were both rocking machetes as point men. Obviously, so first platoon we had two sections. Obviously, there was Alpha and Bravo and stuff, and Alpha had two point men at the time, and it was me and my other buddy, and then Bravo had their two. Um, but yeah, my other buddy, he started rocking a machete. He ordered it and everything. He's like, dude, I need to order a machete. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And sure enough, dude, he ordered his own machete. And then obviously we were known as the Thug Platoon, the Thug Platoon, because we were rocking machetes. And I'm like, dude, like there's a lot of thick brush out here, like, and whatever. My mom, I never told my mom. I obviously chose a combat job. Um, the thing with 10th Mountain, at least with 371, we were mixed between. I was a cavalry scout. I went to basic training, excuse me, as a cavalry scout. And when I got to Fort Drum, New York, we were mixed between scouts and infantrymen. So it was literally infantry and scouts. And
Yeah.
And
for those who don't know, what's the difference between scout and infantry?
Well, back in the day, back in the day, obviously, the day, scouts were used to for reconnaissance. So they would go up ahead and like let them know, like, oh, hey, this is going on here, the full specs and blah, blah, blah. And obviously they were used for comms and mechanized, some small light infantry stuff. But again, obviously with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, they eventually, clearly there's a joke between scouts and infantry anyways of how scouts, whatever, being all this other shit. But I didn't get that experience because we were both mixed between scouts and infantry. So when infantry squad leaders were trying to talk shit, I'm like, well, we're literally doing the same job. If anything, I'm the one that's leading the formation. So there's that. So whatever, obviously. Anyways, so we were mixed between scouts and infantry, and fuck, I forgot where I was going with that.
Sorry. You were saying
so you guys were Thug Platoon, and you guys both had the machetes, and then that's when he asked if what the difference between the cavalry and the infantry.
So I never told my mom. I never told my mom anything of what I did. Every time she would ask, I'm like, oh yeah, mom, we just go to a village, talk to people.
Damn.
I cut down trees. You know, clearly I wasn't lying. I was cutting down trees.
Partly.
You tell her everything but the bad shit.
Yeah.
So when my mom would tell like my sister and my brother-in-law, like, oh, Geoffrey's cutting trees and this and that, and my brother-in-law, he ain't cutting trees. Like my brother-in-law knew, like,
yeah,
your thief was like, you could have done that here.
Like this dude ain't cutting trees. Like, but again, I didn't lie, because we would cut trees that were blocking the tower guards and obviously out on patrol, and they would get in the way. Clearly, I mean, I wasn't lying. I was cutting trees, but clearly, I never told my mom anything, you know. And then my brother and my sister knew, you know, what I did was similar, or they had an idea of what I did. I never told them anything either. Like, oh yeah, like everything's going good, like, you know. But obviously, that was the point man, and that was when I remember we were getting ready to go to. Everybody wanted to go home on R&R. Obviously, Army, we do real deployments, not like Marine and Navy, where it's only 6 to 9 months.
Sure, sure,
You
sure.
know, we do a whole year. At least back in the day.
Back in the
But
day, yeah.
um, so we got to go home on R&R and whatever, and everybody wanted to go home right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to go
The earliest, right? You can go like the
May. I want to
earliest,
go
and
May, June, July, and I'm like, nah, I'd rather go, like halfway. That way, when I come back, like, cool, we're already over the lump.
yeah.
So I went home end of September. Came back. I went home for 15 days. Came back totally refreshed and stuff. And that was when I came back, and they're like, "Hey, your troop got moved. Your troop got moved. They're at this place." And we're like, "All right, that's weird. So cool. Like they're waiting for you." So we got there, and
When you say troop, what do you mean by that? Can you define that for people who don't know?
so we were so an infantry unit usually is like 100 something plus people. A scout. We were a light infantry unit, but we were a scout. No, we were a scout unit. I don't know. We were a scout unit, but light infantry shit. So we were literally like less than like 80 people maybe.
Okay.
And so that's when they're like, "Hey, your troop's getting moved to a new area. Blah blah. You guys need to go here." So I'm like, "All right, cool." So I come back, and then like all my buddies, first of all, hearing it obviously from the the privates, I guess the regular buddies, and then the sergeants, and then so on.
Yeah.
Like, dude, we're going to a new area. Like, we're gonna pull security, dude. We're gonna die. Like, dude, they're planning IEDs. They're doing all this, blah blah blah. And I'm like, geez, like what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like, first of all, who's gonna die? Like, I'm the one finding the like I'm the one finding these things. I'm the one in front of you. Like, like
Yeah.
what? And second of all, I'm like, if we're gonna die, like, let's get this over with. Like, I got shit to do. Like
Yeah.
I in Afghanistan, it was definitely a mindset. It was definitely like, believe me, I talk shit and all that all day long. Obviously, I can get serious when I need to be, and that's how it was. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, what ifs? It's not gonna do nothing for us. Like, let's get it. If it's gonna happen, let's get it. Let's go through it, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's when we move out to that new area, and they're like, you guys are gonna be living out of your trucks, and we're gonna pull security for a cop that's gonna be built from scratch, and that's it. And we're like, damn, it's crazy, and they're like, we don't know when we're gonna be able to call home or whatever. So whatever time you do get to call home, excuse me, at that fob that we're gonna be stationed at, call home and whatever.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, cool, and that's where we go. The second we go out there, like I remember, I don't remember what unit or what, but engineers had stopped because they were waiting for us to roll through first because we had the mine roller
Mm.
and stuff like that because we were mechanized at the time. So we rolled out,
Right.
and they're like, "Oh, engineers are holding still because they want the mine rollers out there first." And we're like, "Well, that's kind of weird because isn't it the engineer's job?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
To
know,
go
you
fucking
know.
take care of
But
those things.
but all right, like here we go. Like, all right, cool. Like, So there we go, and my buddy rolls out the mine roller. I was the driver of the second vehicle, and everybody's sweeping their area. Obviously, we had to clear the 360 security and on the trucks, and they're eventually the engineers felt it safe to start clearing, and there it went. And I remember it was like a day or two later, after obviously engineers lost a couple of their vehicles, their Huskies and stuff like that. They're like, all right, hey, we got to do a presence patrol, on the village. And obviously it was our first time everybody being there.
Yeah.
And I was the first one to step off, and they were like, all right, like we're going to roll out at like 4 in the morning, whatever. And um, there we go. Obviously, we're right there camping out at night. We wake up in the morning, we go and we start making our way towards the village, and we get pretty close to the village. That's we our commander wants to talk to the village elders, stuff like that, and that's when we take our first contact right there. And again, everybody posts up the way we do. The squad leaders assigned us to our positions and all that. And I remember our old platoon sergeant was like, "Hey, like, sir, like, we've been here too long. You know, we gotta go. We gotta go." Like, and he's like,
Yeah.
"No, I want to talk to these people more."
That's why you
And
guys were being
whatever.
engaged.
And we were there too long. Yeah, that's when we all started getting shot at and stuff, and we always just started to pull back, whatever, and so anyways, so we go back to our village after that, and you know, engineers are still doing their thing, trying to clear over there, and um, that was that was when like we start still going out on patrols, and they're like, okay, well, every time we get close to that village, we keep getting shot at. So we got to clear this compound. We got to clear this compound first. That's in front of the potential base that we're trying to build.
Yeah.
You know, and then they're like, we got to clear that wash, and then we got to clear that compound. And that's when they're like, all right, we got to go there. So we start going there, and obviously the military and their sea wire. So we go, and the little that I start clearing, you know, is the shit that gets sea wired. That way, obviously, you know, we already have like half-ass towers posted up, and
Yeah.
or the MRAPs and stuff like that. So obviously they'll look at that compound and stuff like that if anybody comes back to it. Obviously, little by little, we were clearing it to to clearly clear it fully.
Right.
And I remember our old lieutenants were telling us, like, were telling the commander, like, hey man, we just need to blow this thing because of all the stuff, you know, that we're finding, you know, because we were finding a lot of things once we got to that compound. And um
Was it just a bunch of
I
weapons, or what was it? Like a bunch of ID material? What was
it
it that they were
was it
finding?
was a bunch it was a bunch of caches. It was a bunch of bulletproof vests. We found Afghan uniforms, blasting caps, half-ass crush boxes that were in like a burlap sack, um, that were like ready to go. They were already like the box, and it was already rigged with the wires,
Damn.
you know, to where you could just like connect it, and that was it,
Yeah.
you know. And um, again, me being a first platoon, I was the only one that had stepped off so far in that area. Um, and I remember that was when second platoon was gonna step off. Um, Second platoon was about to step off on I think November 10th on there, and I remember my platoon sergeant was like, "Hey man, you need to get second platoon up to par on, like, you know, the dirt, because the dirt was like you stepped on it, and, you know, it was like it was
Moon dust.
powdery, it was all
Yeah.
that, so it was harder to find things, and they were using
Yeah, puro polvo.
Yeah.
they were using non-metallic materials and stuff like that, and and they're like, you know, get second platoon up to par on what they're doing, or give them an idea, I guess they told me. And then, you know, I had their squad leader, their team leaders, and the platoon sergeant, or their squad leaders, everybody that, you know, everybody of leadership, I guess, like, I
Yeah.
guess it was like 4 or 5 of them, you know, like, hey, you know, it's this way, you know, obviously, like, I even threw my knife on the floor, and like, look at how much it went in, just like dropping it, you know, like, it's different, and blah blah, and this and that. And the wash, they use the wash for everything, and be careful with the wash. And they step off the next day. um and I don't remember the time exactly, but a couple times into a couple of minutes,
sometime later.
sometime into their patrol. It wasn't that long. You hear, you hear a explosion go off, and like you hear them call the 9 line and stuff like that, and somebody took an IED hit and stuff like that, and that was when Second Platoon lost one of their guys um, on Veterans Day.
Damn.
They lost one of their guys, and again doing that same wash slash compound that I was finding all the other stuff, and obviously he didn't make it, and so that happened, and then
you know what his name was?
His name was Theodore Rushing. He actually, what's crazy is that I only physically met the guy, like talked to like twice maybe, for a little bit, but he was still my brother in arm.
Of course.
What was crazy is that he was the basic training class after me.
Oh no shit.
After us, after the guys. So he literally had the same drill sergeants and stuff like that I did, and the 7 other guys that came with me or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, that's crazy. Obviously, when they came to us, I'm like, oh, damn, that's crazy. Like, you guys had the same drill sergeants. Like, oh yeah, so and so, so and so. Obviously, he wasn't in my platoon. We got other guys from their basic training that came to our platoon. So, so needless to say, they deployed literally into Afghanistan. At least I had like a month and a half.
Yeah, so they went straight into it. You had
they went straight into it. I think we were already like 4 months into Afghanistan at the time.
Yeah,
and that's when they joined up. That's when they came to us, like, oh, here comes some new guys from basic training, and we're like, oh shit. And that's when
straight from basic. That's wild.
So anyways, he was I think the 7th guy in formation, and he got blown up and he passed away, stuff like that, and we went back to the FOB and stuff, to do his memorial, and obviously that's where like it settled in so much more, because he was our first and technically only casualty at the time.
Yeah.
And how serious it was, and even a lot of my buddies were like, damn, like, we like, this is for real, like this. Like, obviously minus us finding all these IEDs and caches, like, obviously this is real.
Right.
And we go back and obviously focused, and that's when third platoon joins us. They got separated from us earlier into the deployment because they went to go do some stuff with the special forces, and so they came back to us, and that's when, like, obviously all that had happened, and their point man was the one finding all the stuff for them. So they joined our 2 platoons together, so we can knock this out, one, not just faster, but efficiently and safely, I guess, and confidently.
Yeah.
And confidently, me and his name was Quentin Pacone. And that's where we were clearing this compound. This compound was big, and like I told you, with the sea wire, like, everything we would clear, like, it would be with sea wire and all that. And again, we were finding things again left and right, and I remember I ended up going back to the FOB that was like an hour or something away, and I probably forgot how far it was, but it was a while away. That was the only time we ever got to, like, call home or do anything, obviously, with electronics.
Yeah. We're back.
So I remember we went back, because we would always go back at least once a month to this FOB to refit. We called it refit. We'd get more MREs, we'd get more water, we'd get more rippets, Obviously, everybody there would like buy their own energy drinks. You know, I wanted Monsters. This fool wanted Red Bulls. You know,
Yeah.
everybody bought their own shit until it ran out, whatever. And so I remember we went back, and it was like a couple days before my birthday. I think it was like 1 or 2 days before my birthday. My birthday's November 26th. And I remember I'm like, okay, I'm gonna use this opportunity to call home, you know, because obviously
Yeah.
we're only here for, you know, a couple hours, you know. And I call home, and you know, my family's telling me happy birthday and all this, and I'm like, oh, cool. I guess at least I get to talk to my family, you know,
Yeah.
and um, I got to talk to my family, obviously, and then they're like, oh, happy birthday, blah blah blah, and so we go back out. I think like the day or two before my birthday. And I'm like, you know, refreshed. You know, you got to, you know, call home. You know, you always feel good when you call home,
Yeah.
especially at that time. Especially at that time, since we didn't have, you know, phones and laptops and stuff. We just had obviously each other and bullshitness, and you know, getting to know each other, and and that's when we go out. You know, we refresh. You know, we're like, all right, let's go out. You know, let's get it. You know, obviously we had just lost one of our guys, so obviously the seriousness of losing one of our guys, and you know, all that obviously puts a lot of pressure on myself and my partner Picon. You know, obviously us being the point man and the one finding things,
Right.
and I remember my buddies, like, they're like, "Oh, happy birthday, Q!" You know, it was November 26th, and those fools like started jumping me, man. You know, they're like punching me, you know, all that. I just turned 20. And I'm like, all right, you assholes. Like, you know, like obviously I started fighting back and
Yeah.
whatever. And then we're still patrolling that compound and stuff like that. And I remember it was pretty funny that so we had a commander. We'll throw this out there because obviously this will be put out.
Yep.
So our commander got swapped out like halfway through deployment. Um, I didn't even mention my Article 15 that I got. Whatever that could be later.
Hey.
It was It was, anyways. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Again, I was fast forwarding a lot of things. So this new commander was a ranger, obviously Army Ranger, and every time somebody would mention a suggestion or something like that, like oh, are you a ranger? Like, do you know what's
Oh
going on?
shit.
And that kind of thing. And we're like, all right, cool, man. You know, obviously I was a private, so clearly I had no authority, and but you know, like when somebody's pulling it like that, I'm like, all right, cool, man. You know, whatever. So
Yeah.
so Picone and I took it upon ourselves. Obviously, you know, the Rangers. Again, no disrespect to any other Rangers, whatever the hell is gonna happen, whatever,
Yeah.
some backlash, whatever. But we always said, like, hey man, you know, I'm like, do you see any Rangers in front of you? And he was like, no. Do you see any Rangers in front of you? He was just as smart as me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope. I'm like, isn't their motto like Rangers lead the way, all the way?
Damn.
And I'm like, do you see anybody in front of you? And they're like, no, no, all right, cool, you know. And then so we would always make it to a point because we would use minehound machines,
Mm-hmm.
the mine detectors, whatever. So it was a minehound. It was called minehound, and so me and him would always be like, hey, minehounds lead the way. Minehounds lead the way, and either one or the other would be like all the way.
Yeah.
You know, just to be smartasses, because obviously we would, before missions, we would meet up before,
Mm-hmm.
and then you know, go over the mission, whatever, and then what we were gonna do. And obviously the commander was there, and we would always like, hey, my house lead the way, all the way. and and they're like, what the fuck? All right, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
And then so November 30th came, and we were clearing that compound still obviously finding things left and right, whatever. And we were clearing it for hours, a couple hours. We were smoked, we were tired, we were done. Obviously in Afghanistan, we had nothing but time, especially obviously not having a base. Like we
Yeah.
literally had no hurry, no nothing. Like we barely had some HESCOs up, barely getting tents up, barely getting, you know, small aid, you know, small electricity, small stuff like
Sure.
contractors and stuff were coming in to, set up the shop, and that was when I was we and my squad leader were done, or me and my team leader, I guess, because obviously squad leader and then there's team leaders. So me and my team leader were done, and this fool was gangster, man. He was from Cleveland, and white dude, man. But man, he was hilarious, man. He's somebody I always looked up to as a squad leader and stuff. Even my lieutenant, man, my old lieutenant, he was a Filipino dude from San Jose, man, and he was gangster. Like he would help me. He would help me uncover caches. We found 7.62 rounds and stuff, and like he would help me dig. I'm like, hey sir, like you don't have to do that. And he's like, fool, like I got this. I'm like, all right, dude, man. All right, man. And anyways, so we were both smoked. We were all tired, and Picone and his squad leader, like everybody was done. The mission was done already, and my lieutenant was like, all right, let's wrap it up. And then my buddy's squad leader was like, hey, let's check this alleyway real quick, and so right, whatever. So I was, at a distance, and in my eyes, I see him sit down and my buddy prepping his mine house. And I'm like, okay. So I walk over there and I'm like, hey man, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just gonna clear this alleyway real quick. I'm like, for what? I'm like, we're just gonna do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day. We gotta clear this whole compound first. And he's like, no, let's knock it out right now. I'm like, all right, like I'll go with you, man. And we go back and forth. And I'm like, all right, what happens to you happens to me. So he's like, all right, let's get it. So they give me a boost. The alleyway was very thin. I guess if I were to measure it, I would say it was like 3-4 feet.
Oh, so barely an alley, huh?
Like narrow. It was very narrow.
Yeah.
But it was like a little long, not too long, and it was like at least 8-9 feet tall because they had to give me a boost to climb up to the left side because sometimes they'd get sloppy, so you would see like track marks, like a fingerprint or like something sticking out.
Sweeping or
something sticking out. So I looked, okay, cool, and it was so narrow that I would jump to the other side. I checked. I'm like, okay, I don't see anything on these both sides. Let me jump down. And we had the MRAPs from both platoons pulling security, so we had the big guns.
Yeah.
The 50s, the Mark 19s, the 240s, everything. So, and then we had it was just leadership on the floor, and then me and him and a couple others laying C-wire. And by the time I got down, he was already like halfway down the little alleyway. And so I'm like, all right, man, hey, I'm back, whatever. And so he gets a hit first. And then he was like, oh, it's nothing, brushed it off. And then we get to the end of the alleyway. And I remember, I was like, damn, dude. I'm like, we still got to clear all this shit tomorrow. And it's obviously open again, it's all mud everywhere. So
sure.
You see in corners like gunpowder jugs. You see burlap sacks. You visibly see the things that they left behind because obviously they probably saw us coming up. So we're like, damn, we still gotta clear all this tomorrow, man. And that's when I had my left arm on the wall and my left foot forward. And he was, from what I remember, obviously my buddies and everybody told me different things, but from what I remember staring down, and I just remember closing my eyes, like a big slap to the face. I just remember an instant, like closing of your eyes, and then what I remember was like when you're like so sleepy or like so pissed or drunk, like you're just like this, and I'm just like, oh, what happened? And then all I remember that, and then I remember like, I'm like, Picone, where are you? Picone, where are you? And, that's all I remember because obviously I remember being on him, and he held my obviously my only hand. He was like, I'm here, man, I'm here. Don't you die on me. I'm here. and like it was vague. It was like vague in the back, and that's all I remember. And I'm like, girl, whatever. It was like, you know, when you have those weird dreams that like,
Yeah, like half asleep, like almost
yeah, like
asleep,
yeah,
almost
honestly,
awake. You know?
like you're half asleep, you know, and and yeah, and then I wake up from what I remember a week later from a medically induced coma, and I wake up in the hospital, and I'm like
What the fuck? Yeah.
confused, dude. I'm very confused, even still. Again, almost 9 years later, I'm like I'll still have dreams. I'm like flickering back and forth because again, I fell asleep with mud and dirt and uniform, and here I am in a hospital bed. Beep beep beep. You know, like
Yeah.
what the hell's
You
going
were in the
on? Like,
fucking desert in fucking Afghan, and then you just wake up in a fucking hospital and you just.
yeah, like insulated, you know,
Holy shit.
TV. I'm like, what the hell's going on? And
Yeah, you got some ice cream and shit, whatever, you know? No,
no,
but
I
like.
wouldn't say all that, you
Right,
know.
right. You know, I'm just fucking with
Um, um. So, and like from what I remember, when I see a nurse or something, that's when I realized I had damage to my mouth because I was trying to talk. I'm like, and I couldn't talk. And I'm like, eventually, clearly, I'm like, what happened or what? And the nurse was like, well, you and Quentin Picone got in a dismounted IED incident. And I'm like, mm-mm, mm-mm. Like, I know I couldn't talk, but I'm like, no way. Like,
yeah, not
no.
us, you know?
Yeah, man. And she was like, no, like, you're here. You're at Bethesda, Maryland, and you just came from so and
Whoa.
so. And these are your injuries. You know, you're missing a little bit of your foot because at the time it was only my toes that were damaged, and like so you're missing, you know, some of your foot and your arms gone, and you know you have shrapnel damage. You have a lot of internal damage.
Yeah.
You took a hit to the face. You know, your jaw is broken, your nose is broken, you have eye damage. You know, we won't know until you go to obviously to the optometrist
Yeah.
and all that, and they're like, you know, half your face is broken. So when they got to my face, I guess that's where I was like, no, like
Not my fucking face.
no way.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't even my face thing. I mean, I was clearly handsome and stuff, you know, I still am, you know, but at the time it was one of those like pinch me, I'm dreaming,
Yeah.
you know. So I like touched my face at first, and I just feel nothing but stitches, like right here. And it's just, you know, and then I pull on it, and I'm just, that's where I'm like, I just start crying, man.
Yeah.
I That's where it settled in, obviously. And then my family, you know, I remember my family coming in, my partner's family coming in, and you
Was
know,
your
I was still messed up because I still didn't know what really happened. I thought I got blown up,
Yeah.
and he came in to save me, and he got blown up. So that's what I was thinking,
Right.
and 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 that wasn't the case until finally, like, I got the story straight. You know, like my boys eventually called me, whatever, and they told me, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right. But I just thought, like, you know, I'm like, oh, you're right, and then and
So was it
I
both of
remember,
you that got hit by that? So
so we both got hit on that same IED. He was probing it to uncover it, and it went off.
damn.
And apparently, from what he said, obviously this is everybody's stories put together, I
Sure.
guess. But when we got blown up, he missed both his legs above and below the knee, and he still was able to shake my boot because I wasn't moving. Eventually, when obviously everything cleared from what he told me,
Yeah.
and the alleyway was so narrow that they had to pull me out first to get to him. So they pulled me out. I was barely conscious, unconscious and stuff. And he was like wide awake, conscious, and I remember from what he said, he was, and from what everybody said, like, yeah, this dude was just like, hey man, check if my dick and balls are there, man. Check if my dick and balls are there, and from what they told me about me, they're like, dude, you kept wanting to get up, you kept wanting to stand up. You were just like, what happened? What happened? They're like, nothing, man. You slipped and fell and you hit your head really hard. You stay down, just
Wow.
stay down. And you're like, no, no, fuck that, fuck that. So I kept trying to get up. Apparently, they're like, no, stay down. And clearly, I didn't know what was going. I didn't know nothing, and that's what I was being told. And that made sense eventually when I made sense of it. Obviously, from what the grogginess and stuff that I was telling you.
Yeah.
And so when they told me about me and my partner, I'm like, so is he alive? Obviously, right away.
Of course.
And they're like, yeah, he's alive. Yeah, he's alive. And obviously, his family was there. So eventually, I was like, I'm like, clearly, like, I'm not dumb. So I'm like, are you guys trying to tell me like you guys don't want to tell me he's dead? Like, what's going on? Like, why can't I see him? Like, why can't I?
Yeah.
This and that, and I'm like, I told his sisters and his family, I'm like, tell him one thing, and only one thing that he would know. Tell him mine hounds lead the way, and tell me what he says.
Yeah.
And then that's when they go over there and they come back and they're like, he says all the way. And I'm like, okay, he's alive.
Yeah.
Obviously, my sarcastic ass, his sarcastic ass,
Yeah.
like, he's alive.
Yeah.
That was the only thing that would have separated. He was the only one that would have known that.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, he's alive. Well, why can't I see him? Why can't, that's when I was like, all right, why this, why that? And like, well, when you get into your own room, you can see him and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, whatever. So when I got to my room, I'm like, all right, when can I see my partner? When can I, that's when my army buddies were calling. And first time I got to talk to them. And it's a very emotional time because they would call the ICU and the ICU was like, no, you can't talk to him until he's up in his room. And I'm like, taking it out on them. Like, why can't I talk to my buddies? Like,
yeah,
I just want to talk to them, this and that. Like, I need to be over there with them. And they're like, no, they're fine. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand what's going on over there right now. Like, and so when I got to my room, like, hey, when can I talk to my buddies? And then they're like, well, whenever they call back. And obviously they've been blowing me off this whole time. And I told my sister, I'm like, hey, whenever they call me, you wake me up. Like, regardless of what I'm doing, like, I want to talk to them.
yeah.
And I finally get to talk to them, and it's just emotional, like, I felt like I let them down, like, I'm sorry, like, even with my family, like, I told them, like, I'm sorry this happened to me, like, even my, my brother, obviously my siblings were the ones that knew more. And my brother was like, I thought you had it, man. I'm like, I did. Like, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say, but I'm sorry. I thought I did. And then obviously my mom felt like completely blindsided because clearly I'm over there cutting
She
trees
thought you were just cutting some palm trees over there
and
and
brush
shit.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so my sister finally tells me, like, hey, like, you need to tell mom, like what happened, at least a little bit, because she's over here asking questions. And so I'm like, hey, mom, I was in combat, and I was the point man, and I did this and I did that. And she starts crying, breaking down, and obviously hearing the truth for the first time, obviously being
Yeah.
blown up already. And I'm like, well, mom, like, clearly pushing all awkwardness aside, I'm like, mom, well, at least you can take me to Costco. I'll have a handicap placard, and obviously just, to make her
Trying to
feel better,
lighten,
And
yeah,
she's
trying
like,
to lighten her mood. Yeah.
yeah, like, she was like, you think that's what I care about? I'm like, well, okay, cool. Like, and that's when I was like, when can I see my partner? And that's when they're like, well, when everything's disconnected from you. I had a feeding tube at the time, I had a chest tube, I had wound vacs, and they're like, well, whenever you can physically get out of your your bed and into a wheelchair, then you can go see him. You got to go to PT, and then you got to go see him. And I remember just waking up, like once they were disconnecting things left and right, like I'm like, look, you need to go get whoever you need to get, because I'm sitting up on this bed. I'm like, I'm tired of you guys pushing me aside, and again, they have procedures, and I get that, but
Right.
I didn't get that at the time,
Sure.
because I just wanted to see him, and that was the only way I can see him is if I physically did it. And so I'm like, I'm sitting up in bed this time. You know, and the first time I sat up in bed, I sat up in bed for almost like 30 minutes, and obviously that was like a big thing. And I passed out like the rest of the day, obviously trying to sit up in bed, because obviously that's the most tiring thing that I've done in a while. And
Yeah.
so, anyways, I eventually end up transitioning, and dude, I'm so tired. Like even on my wheelchair, going to go down the hall to go see him, like I'm just exhausted from doing all that. And I remember seeing him, and man, dude, like I was like mopey, but I was trying to keep it together, because obviously I was rolling up on him in the electric wheelchair, like,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, hey man, like, what's up? And obviously it's an awkward encounter at first, because obviously it was
Sure.
our first time seeing each other. He's like, man, you're a stronger man than me. You're already, mobile and stuff. And I'm here, and I'm like, nah, man, and that's when he was like, I'm sorry for what happened to you and stuff. And I'm like, man, dude, like it is what it is, and like, at least we're here with our families now. We made it, we're alive. And that's when he's like, I'm sorry what happened to you. And I told him, I'm like, well, would it have been any differently if I would have been in front of you, if it was vice versa? And he's like, no, I would have gone down there with you. And I'm like, okay, then
That's just how it was.
that's
Yeah.
how we leave it, and yeah, it felt good to see him. And then that was like almost 3-ish weeks after getting blown up, I finally got to see him. And um,
What were the
then
extent of
around,
his injuries, man?
he lost both his legs above and below the knee,
Right.
and the hand that he was probing with was split in half, which was his right hand, and they were able to save that, luckily. And so so yeah, and then obviously him being from Oklahoma, me being from California, and obviously the trauma I took to my face, they're like, hey man, you need to, before you go to San Diego, to prosthetics and C5, which was like, I forgot all the 5 C's. It was whatever,
Sure.
but it was specifically for the combat wounded, blah blah blah. So they're like, they specialize in all that, whatever. But before you go there, you got to go see polytrauma in Palo Alto. Since you took a hit to the face, we need to see the extent of your psychological health, your neurological health, and all this other stuff, like what you remember, what you don't. And I'm like, okay, like, because it would always piss me off when they would ask me, like, who's the president, how many days of the week there are,
Sure.
um, what's your name, when's your birthday. I'm like, why are you guys asking me this? Like, I was so confused.
Yeah.
And then, like a day or two before Christmas of 2011, that's when they put me in a plane and sent me to San Jose. So I make it there. I think it was a good like 2 days before, and like get to San Jose, they put me in, whatever, and all that. And then I remember, I got to San Jose. I'm like, oh damn, never been to San Jose, like, oh damn, never been to San Diego, So I was like,
Yeah.
like I don't remember San Diego going to TJ, and
Some
and so
taquitos.
yeah, so I get there to San Jose, and I'm like, all right, it's cool, like whatever. And obviously I'm like very optimistic on getting better. It was always about getting better. Like as soon as I sat up in bed, it was just like, what I need to do next, what I need to do
Right.
next. I need to be,
Yeah, I was gonna
I need,
ask, like, was that always your mindset? Like, even like immediately after? Was it just as soon as you sat up is when you started just fucking like, yo, let's go, nowhere but
no,
forward?
it honestly started, my partner was my motivation to get up out of bed, because obviously that was that was the criteria on what I needed to go see him. And so I'm like, okay, like if I need to sit up in bed, the fuck, you best believe I'm gonna sit up in bed. Like I need to know, I need to see him,
Yeah.
and so yeah, they took out my feeding tube, they took out my chest tube, and took out everything, and obviously there was tests throughout that I had to do
Sure.
first, and so anyways, yeah, so all that, and so now when I got to San Jose, I was like, what do I need to do? I need to get better. I need to get walking. I need to I need to get this shit over with. Like this needs to
Yeah.
happen now. And that was again, I was cut at the ankle. Um, I was cut at the ankle at the time, and it was literally the end of my leg, and then they used my heel as cushion at the bottom, um, to cushion it, obviously, and
Yeah.
so that's when I was stepping. I was trying to step and all that, and I remember eventually after my physical therapist and I got over that, um, we we like rigged up like a sandal, a moon boot that I called the one that you use to for a broken ankle, and some PT wrap to like make me like a half-ass prosthetic because I wanted to step.
Yeah.
Sure enough, after that, like I was able to step. It was like able to soften the blow, and I was able to like take some steps, and I'm like, hell yeah, hell yeah, hell yeah, and I'm like, hey, can I walk to my room? And my room was like down a small ass hallway, and I'm like, can I walk to my room? They're like, if you're up for it, I'm like, I know I can do it. I know I can. And they're like, all right, we'll be behind you in the wheelchair, in case you fall or whatever, like at least stay close to the wall, that way you have something to hold on to.
Yeah.
So like I was able to walk my first time to my room. And I was fucking exhausted after that, and I was in a lot of pain, but
How was that though?
but
How would you describe that feeling, man? Like how, obviously it's
it
your first
was
time fucking, being able to walk, and I'm sure it wasn't easy, but how would you describe that feeling?
it was honestly liberating because again, when I couldn't put pressure on it, all I kept thinking about, what if I'm never gonna walk again? What if I'm never gonna do this? And my siblings were like, it's okay, like you'll be able to walk soon, like you'll be, they were just trying to encourage me,
Right.
and I was just like, what if I'm not, like, because I literally can't put, and again, I sucked it up and went for it, and I did it,
Would you say,
and I walked.
yeah, would you say that sometimes like during those early phases of recovery, would you say that sometimes those negative thoughts and those like just like nah, fuck, I may not be able to do this, would you say that sometimes those were winning over your motivation to get better?
At the time, no. At that time, no. It was just about like, fuck, okay, like damn, this hurts, but like no, fuck that, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, I gotta do it, I gotta do it. Like I have to do this. I have to walk. And it was in my head that I had to do this. There was no way, there was no negative stuff at the time. This was like, no, I need to do this.
Yeah.
And I was able to walk, and um I was able to walk, and that's when they were like, all right, like clearly we can't give you a prosthetic here. Um we gotta wait till you go to San Diego. I'm like, all right, well, I'm done with San Jose, and that's when they're like, all right, let's start the paperwork for San Diego. Let's send you home for a week or two, in February of 2012. Um, and um, at the time, I was like, hell yeah, I finally get to go home, get a break from being crippled, being handicapped, being in a
Yeah.
hospital. Obviously, like, all the Mexicans in the novelas, they'd be like, oh, I don't want to go to a hospital and blah blah. Like,
Rather
but no,
die, dude. Yeah, they'd rather
yeah,
die before go to the doctor.
it was real, dude. Like, and then obviously after all that, like, I'm just like, dude, I'm done, like being checked on, like I'm done all this. Like, I just want to live a normal life, for a little bit at least. And then, so I do that, and then I go to San Diego, eventually start my recovery, and that's where like I start seeing all the doctors for all my separate problems, And
You were still in the army, right?
uh,
It wasn't like
yeah,
discharged
I was still
immediately.
active. I was still technically active duty,
Yeah.
and I was in the Wounded Warrior Battalion, whatever. And that was when, believe me, Balboa opened up a lot of different outlooks on the military, because that's where you saw like all the malingers, all the like, oh, this hurts me, and then
Yeah.
they're out doing their own thing, and I'm like, all right, dude, like, all right, cool, to each their own, but don't try to relate to me when you're over here, faking things and stuff like
Right.
that. And that's all you kept seeing. And so when I got there, clearly I was like pissed. Clearly I was pissed at the situation. That it was like being at the top of your game, scoring all the points, and then you get taken out, and then you can't go back in.
Yeah.
I'm just like, no, like my boys are still deployed. Like, no, like, um, and so like I try to speed through my recovery. I see all my doctors. I see everybody, and they're like, well, it's going to take this long, and your recovery is going to be extensive because of the damage you took to your face, and your internal damage, and all that. And I'm like, what? Like, why is it going to take this long? Why can't this be done in like 3 or 4 surgeries? Obviously that was like, let's get
Yeah.
this over with. And they're like,
Yeah.
you don't understand what's going on, dude. And
It's a process, right? There's steps that we
yeah,
have to take. There's tests that we have to do to see the extent of the damage, and we gotta make sure that your brain isn't rattled from the fucking blast wave. We gotta see
oh
what
yeah,
type of effects came from that. We gotta see what the fuck is actually going on before they can take steps into, your whole
absolutely.
healing procedure.
And that's where I was like, dude, like, I wanted like away from that stuff. And that's when they presented me with like, oh, well, you want to intern for the U.S. Marshals. And I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be cool, dude. Like something to get me away from,
That
this stuff.
weird environment,
So, so they're like, yeah, yeah, cool. So I got in with the U.S. Marshals. I was interning, paper pusher, the court appointments and stuff like that for prisoners and stuff. I did all that paperwork, internships, or not, whatever, but it got me out of hospital.
right?
And eventually the doctors were like, well, hey, like, you're not coming to your appointments because you're at your internship. We're going to stop your internship. And I'm like, well, my PT, I'm like, you guys keep doing the same things over and over again. I'm like, I'm already walking. I already have my walking leg.
Yeah,
They already gave me my walking prosthetic leg. And I'm like, dude, like, I'm not like everybody else that's there for 2 or 3 hours, socializing and stuff. Like, I want to get better. Like, it's not a social club for me. Like, you guys are just stretching me out and giving me heating packs and doing the same exercises. Like, when am I going to start running? When am I going to do this? It's like, well, you're not coming to PT. That's why we're not giving you your leg. And eventually,
jeez.
I go back and forth. I go back and forth, and I'm like, I keep trying to run on my walking prosthetic leg, and I keep breaking it. I keep breaking it. And my prosthetist was like, hey, man, this fool needs a running leg because he keeps breaking this prosthetic. Because obviously they put it to a certain extent to get you walking, and then
Right.
they'll
Do they
harden it.
start it in different phases? Is that how it works?
Yeah,
Like
it's like a
walking,
beginning. Yeah,
jogging, running, shit like that?
well, yeah, everybody's. So they ask you at the beginning, you're like, what are your physical and mental goals or whatever? And I'm like, I just want to run and play soccer again. And that's all I told them when I got to San Diego. I just want to run and play soccer again. And so when they're like, all right, well, we got to get you to PT, all that, whatever. And so when I finally was going to PT, finally walking, finally doing all that, I'm like, so where's my leg? And I'm like, well, they're like, well, you're always at your internship instead of
Mm,
doing PT. I'm like, well, it's dumb. I'm like, to be honest,
yeah.
like, I'm like, I'm ready for more. Like, everybody's there just socializing, doing nothing. Like, no offense. I'm like, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
And then that's when I tell my doctor, I'm like, just give me my leg. Sign off on my running leg. And I guarantee I'm ready to run. And he's like, all right, if I sign off on your leg, you got to go to what's called the agility clinic. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, you sign off on my leg, I'll go to agility clinic. All right, cool. So we made that pact. I get my running leg, and I'm like, hell yeah, dude. Finally got my running leg. And so we go down to agility to the gym, and And I tell my physical therapist, I'm like, hey man, before we do the PT way, where the proper way and all that, I'm like, can I just run? I'm like, if I fall, whatever, like tell me I told you so.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just want to run. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, here, record this.
Is that video of you in that you
Yeah,
have on your
and that's
Facebook where
and
you
and
just
that's where
fucking
that's where I ran, and I didn't know how to stop yet. That's why I ran into the wall. Like I didn't know how to do
right?
clearly the PT thing,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to run. And after I did that, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm ready.
And you
I'm ready
fucking
to run.
ran.
I'm like, I'm ready to run. I got this. And she was like, all right, let's go, let's do it. And so I started doing it and all that. And again, that was in the middle of my surgeries, and that was when I first started seeing mental health at San Diego, Balboa. Um, my first experience with mental health wasn't exactly the best at San Jose, Palo Alto, because they legit asked me, like, have you ever experienced anything traumatic? And I'm like,
You think?
I'm literally in a wheelchair right in front of you,
Yeah.
missing my arm and foot, and
My
all this is still
face is cut
fresh, like
out. Yeah.
everything's still bright red, and you're asking me this now, like. And then there I go, whatever. I'm like, no, this is dumb. This is dumb. So there I go with Balboa,
Jesus
and
fucking
they're like,
Christ.
that's when they're like, okay, like let's talk about it. And I'm like, oh well, again, if I'm talking about it, that means I'm not over it yet. At that
Yeah.
point in my life,
Right.
I was just like, oh no, I'm good, I'm good. All right, cool, whatever. Like, no, yeah, I'm running, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Looking at it optimistically, like, all right, yeah, yeah. Like, I wish I was with my buddies, but here I am. Whatever. Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah.
and and I was just pissed. I was just pissed at the situation that I was taken out of the game.
Sure.
And again, there I was with other people that were like, "Oh yeah, I'm getting out. Oh, fake it till you make it." And I'm like, I'm over here trying to, some people are actually trying to stay in, and you're over here saying "fake it till you make it" and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, cool, like whatever. That's on you. And so again, my mental health appointment, I was just like, all right, like I don't want to see the psychiatrist. I don't want to be on more medications that I'm already on. And
Yeah.
at the time, I was already on like 3 or 4. And I'm like, I don't want to be on more. I don't want to be on more. Like, well, I'll just go see him. And so obviously, that was when all the surgeries were settling in, and I was on. I was getting 2 or 3 surgeries a week, or not a week, 2 or 3 surgeries a month. Um,
Jeez.
on all the medications, one pain meds, but also like, um, you know, constipation medication, anti-inflammatories. I can't even think right now. The for infections and stuff.
Like antibiotics.
Antibiotics.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly I couldn't think of the name, but antibiotics and stuff like that. And obviously, and then that's when I'm like, oh, like going through all these surgeries, like obviously, it must take a toll on you, whatever, blah blah. So that's when I started taking like psychological medication, and that's when I was like, yeah, finally trying to come to a conclusion, like, okay, like there's a lot of things wrong with me. Okay, let me start accepting this. Like,
Right.
when I was being honest with everything, I was like, well, yeah, like I literally have trouble focusing. I am in a lot of pain. I am doing this. Like, I can't sleep. I can't this and that. And here I am later on like 9, 10 medications, and I'm taking everything that they're telling me that's gonna help me. So at the time of desperation, I guess I would say, I wanted to be fixed. I was broken and I wanted to be fixed.
Sure.
And this is what was going to be done to fix me. So I was like, all right, surgeries are going to fix me. All right, medication's going to fix me. And I'll be back in the game. I'll be back doing and who I was. And so I took all these medications, did all these surgeries, did all these things. And it was exhausting me, man. It was exhausting me. And again, at the time, I was dating my wife, and we were barely. I was barely sleeping. She was barely sleeping. Like, I remember sweating so much that I thought I peed the bed a couple times.
Jeez.
But it was like my chonies were still dry and stuff, but the bed was wet. Like, everything was wet. Like, and I remember throwing up and stuff from medication and all this other stuff, and like and I didn't want nobody to help me. I was like, no, like, no, I don't want you to help me. I don't want you to see me like this. I don't.
Would you say that this is when the mental health aspects of your problems that you experienced started, coming out because you started having to talk about them more, having to kind of, I guess, accept and really just because you have to get it out, right? It's not about just holding it in and just oh, like we were saying earlier before we started this, you were like, just sweep it, just sweep it. Would you say that once you
Honestly,
started talking about it, that it started kind of really affecting your lifestyle?
so again, like, yeah, um, yeah. Again, talking about it was obviously not being over it. So that's where I was like in the middle.
Yeah,
Like, do I talk about it? Do I not?
right.
Talking about it means that I won't be over it, but then talking about it is going to be able to help me, and
Yeah,
help the doctors better address me, and again, here I am on 9, 10 different medications, and not even the happy ones that everybody thinks of. I wasn't on no good ones. It was just like psych meds, nerve pain, nerve meds, like high blood pressure meds, high heart rate, because my heart rate would be through the roof. It'd be at like 100, 115, 110, just sitting here normal.
mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, fine. Like, this is me."
Really.
And but again, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't like whatever. And again, it was I was already at the top. I was already running, walking, all this, and I'm like, where do I go from here? You know, and that's where I guess it started to really settle in that I'm gonna be a double amputee. And then in the middle of that, in 2013 August, um, that guy Riddick that I was telling you about, I
Yeah.
get a phone call. I was back home. I was back home in Wheatley, and I remember getting a call from my lieutenant, and he was like, "Hey man, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm about to go back to San Diego, And he's like, "Well, Riddick committed suicide," and I'm like, "No way." So I'm like, "All right, I'll let you go out, T." And he was like, "You good?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm good." And so I just yelled, "Fuck," because there he was, obviously my army buddy that came from basic training.
Yeah.
You know, obviously him being an older man, obviously whatever. Like we didn't really see eye to eye and stuff like that in basic training, and then we find out, basic training finishes. Obviously, all the basic training drama finishes, and then we go to our first unit, and that's when we get told, like, we're gonna get to deploy.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, oh, everybody's partying already at the time when we got there. And I remember we went out to the club. And obviously, I was 19 at the time, and that's when he introduces me to Jack Daniels. This is the
Yeah,
first time
boy.
that I've ever drank whiskey.
Yeah.
And he was like, "I bet you're used to that dirt rubbing alcohol, tequila. Obviously, service members just talking trash."
Talking shit. Yeah.
And I'm like, "You old man." I'm like, "What do you know about drinking?" Obviously. And he's like, "More than you, young buck." And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, "Try this American stuff." And I'm like, "What's this American stuff?" And he's like, Jack Daniels. And I'm like, "All right, cool." And took a shot of Jack, man. And that right there, man, tell you that Jack Daniels my thing, man. But
That's the
I got
military
introduced.
sponsored drink.
I got introduced to Jack Daniels because of him. So again, obviously, hearing the news that he committed suicide, like it, you just think of the good times.
Of course.
You know, you think of the times where you get introduced to Jack, or you're in basic training, or you're being deployed. He's in your truck with you. I remember I was the driver and he was the gunner, and one of our buddies was like, "Hey, I need to go to the restroom." And obviously, that's when we were leaving out of our truck, so we had to pull security. You know, whenever somebody literally needed to go.
Jeez.
And so I'm like, "Hey, Riddick, I'm like, get your camera ready, man." I'm like, "Hey, let me know when he pulls his pants down," you know. And so obviously, like, I drive not too far away, but like, you know, I drive some feet, and he just takes pictures.
Yeah.
And that's all I thought about.
Yeah.
At the time, I was just like,
You know, the fond memories, right?
and that's when I was getting surgery that week too. And I regret it now, obviously, plenty of times not going to his service and all that, and because I knew like my surgeries and everything, and everything that I had lined up surgery wise was gonna get pushed back, and I just didn't want to. I didn't want to keep getting poked anymore. I didn't want to keep getting medications anymore. I didn't want to.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that happened, and again, he was my basic training buddy. You know, I met
Yeah.
his parents when we graduated, um, and we
Before.
kept the contact after I got blown up, and he would call me from time to time, and obviously on social media, you know, everybody would catch up on my thing, and
Would you
and
say
yeah,
that?
so
Would you say that the and I know this isn't like an easy question, or whatever, but would you say that there was ever any sort of like sign or anything like that he was struggling? Did he ever mention it to anybody, or like, do you know, like?
honestly, not to myself,
Yeah.
not to me,
Mm-hmm.
not to me,
You know what, man? Guys tend to do that, man.
but obviously his family and obviously those close to him will say otherwise, but
Yeah.
not to me. And again, even when we talked, like it was all
It was all cool.
it was all cool. Like you'd message me, like, comment on my stuff, like, "Hey man, glad you're doing good, like
Yeah.
glad you're killing it, can't wait to see you," and yeah, that was in 2013. And obviously, again, I saw him. Obviously, I skip ahead a lot, but
You're good, bro. You're
um
good.
um so when my boys came back, they came back in April-ish of 2012, and that was like exactly like almost 6 months after we got blown up. um they're like, "Oh, the troops coming back, they're gonna have a military ball," and obviously I'm like, "We gotta go."
Of course.
I tell my I tell I tell my wife, girlfriend at the time, I was like, "Let's go," and we end up going, and that's when everybody sees me for the first time. And I remember, dude, I just wanted to see them,
Yeah.
all of them. And I get there and I'm like, "Dude, my LT picks us up," and I'm like, "Oh, just keep me away from the squad leader, because I can't deal with that right now. I want to see my boys." And so I start seeing my boys. I hug everybody that I see, man. Like when I got there, I'm just riddled with like fucking emotions.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, like I'm glad I see you guys. I'm glad you guys are here. Like all I ever thought about for the last 6 months, if you guys were gonna come back. And so obviously I saw my buddy Reddick. I saw my buddies, and I remember being in a circle, awkward as shit, like with my platoon. In a circle, like I'm the one like, "Oh yeah, yeah," being me, the bullshitter, shit talker. And everybody's quiet, and I'm like, why are you guys quiet? Like, why? Like, what's going on? And they're like, and that's when one of my squad leaders was like, dude, you should have died. So forgive us for like not being able to talk to you right now. Like, we worked on you, and we saw you not responsive. So yeah, forgive us. And I'm like, fuck, Roger that. Like, shut me up real quick, because
Yeah.
again, it's one thing. People will say this too, like, is it hard being blown up, and is it hard this and that? I'm like, it's one thing being blown up, and obviously, yes, it's very hard. Obviously, Javier has seen me limp and in pain and whatever, but I think it'd be a lot harder to work on somebody that's obviously on the brink of life and death and missing limbs and
It being somebody important to you, you know what I mean? Like I think
yeah, missing.
I don't think it's an easy position for anybody. You know, especially your brothers there, seeing you, somebody who's closer than family. You know, seeing somebody who may potentially not make it. You know, and I'm sure
And
that.
that's where I say,
Go ahead.
that's where I say again, getting blown up, sadly, is easy because it's unintentional. You're not like, oh, I'm gonna get blown up, unless obviously somebody is intentional doing that, but
Right.
it's unintentional. What is intentional is working on somebody, saving them. Like my buddies that put 2 tourniquets to save the rest of my arm,
Yeah.
and gauze my face and all that. Like, they didn't even recognize me because of all the damage that I took to my face. And again, yeah, I wouldn't be here without my medic and my buddies.
Yeah.
Um,
Would you say that was like the
and
first time that you actually thought about it kind of from like their perspective instead of like from yours? You know what I mean?
so yeah, seeing them again, it definitely, like, I'm back with my boys. I'm back with my guys, and so yeah, so I see my buddies, and that's all, and that's all I want to see them. And then my partner, obviously it's my first time seeing him since the hospital and stuff, and I'm walking on my prosthetic, and he's right there, on one prosthetic and one not, because his other leg wasn't healing right, and that's the first time us seeing each other since the hospital. And again, like, that's where you start seeing a little bit more, like, it was hard to see me again,
Yeah.
because that was his, I guess his stuff settling in, and I just wanted to see him and again, and my buddies, and we took a picture together, and he went on his way and I went on my way at the ball, and his boys, I was mine. And it was a good time, obviously, seeing everybody back from deployment,
Yeah.
and everybody, like, pitched in for my Stetson, my Spurs. Being a Cavalry Scout, that's our thing. Stetson and Spurs, so everybody pitched in for that. My uniform, my Purple Heart, or my ribbons. My old squad leader, he gave me his old Spurs that you see behind me,
Mm-hmm.
right there. When he was first starting out as a Cavalry Scout, and he was one dude that I look up to. I looked up to because he was a shit talker, bullshitter, fucking came down on you the hardest, dude. He smoked the shit out of you.
Yeah.
But he always, like, was like, no, you're wrong, and blah blah blah, whatever, and let's shit talk all day, but, like, let's get it. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, cool, Roger Sergeant, and if you talk to one of my squad leaders, and believe me, you can always message them. They'll tell you. They told me after the fact that I got blown up. They're like, hey man, you were that soldier that we just wanted to punch in the face, dude. And obviously, I always did that thing where I'm like, you want to punch me in the face right now, don't you? Like, to oh, and they would smoke us and all that. Like, I was physically fit, so they were trying to smoke us, or, the joint, the mass smoking, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you like that? You like that? blah blah blah. I'm like, Roger, Sergeant, just like, oh, you want to finish? Negative, Sergeant. Like, just bullshit, like.
Yeah.
And again, it took me to get blown up for my old leadership to be like, dude, like, believe me, you were that soldier that we wanted to punch in the face and like take to the back. But hey, when it came to doing the mission and like it's gonna suck and this is what we're gonna do, you just said, Roger, where do you need me? Where do you need me? If you said do this, I said how far? You said green, I said go.
Yeah.
You said red, I said stop. Like that was literally it.
Yeah, you were a
And
soldier, you know what I mean? Like you were doing what you were meant
and
to do.
and so when obviously there they are telling me all this, and I'm like, well, fuck, you guys, motherfuckers, you guys couldn't tell me this, before, but all right, cool, here we are, 6 months after I get blown up, but whatever. And so I see them again. Obviously, it boosts me up to push through my therapy again, and obviously I keep jumping back and forth. But
You're
here
good, bro.
again with my buddy, obviously 2013, here it comes mid surgeries and yeah, it was hard, dude. It was hard going through all those surgeries. Going mentally, it was very exhausting. And on those medication, I would take like 2-3 naps during the day. Like I would just be legit alive and awake watching TV, and then somehow like I just get very sleepy, heavy, groggy. Like I felt nothing. I literally felt nothing. I was just numb. I just felt like a zombie. I'd wake up sometimes throwing up because of, I guess, too much medication
Yeah.
and yeah, man, it was hard because again, those first 2 years of my recovery, it was just nothing but surgeries, and then ready to commit suicide, um, and I'm just like, what the fuck, and then um, bunch of other stuff, and there, there I am, and um, out of the army, I'm getting out of the army soon, and I'm like, well, damn, what the hell am I gonna do? Getting out of the army. So I start like, volunteering here and there, and
Yeah.
um, I start doing things just to get out of the house, and 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 that's where I guess like I just took it upon myself to get off all these medications. Like I literally like went cold turkey on a lot of them. And I was just like, dude, like this ain't me. Like this isn't me, being this numb, being this
Yeah.
distant, being this non-happy dude. Like literally nothing. I was like mopey and all this. Like no, like. So I finally get off all these medications and slowly start to feel better, and and that's when my wife and I get married in Laguna Beach. My army buddies come down, my medic and my two other buddies that I was close to come, and uh, we get married, and we have a good time, and we go to Laguna Beach. We have an even better time, and
Fuck yeah.
again, I was inviting my partner to everything that would happen. I would try to invite my partner to everything, my wedding and all that, and never wanted to come, and um. So then that's when obviously I had put in for Homes for Our Troops, so donated my house. I got my house back in June of 2015.
It's just right after you got out.
I got out in 2013 of October,
Right.
and so fast forward, we got my house back in June. June of 2015, we moved to Temecula, and that's where like I really started putting myself out there on running and stuff. Host Rock Troops was like, "Hey man, we're gonna start a running team. Do you want in?" And I'm like, "Hell yeah, let me try it." And which race do you want to do? I'm like, "I'm gonna do the half marathon." And these other amputees were like, "Oh, let's do it, let's do it." I'm like, "All right, let's do it." And then like a week before, they're like, "Nah, man, a half marathon's a lot." And I'm like, "I'm still doing it." And they're like, "All right, well, we're gonna do the 10K." I'm like, "All right, cool." So they do the 10K, and I do the half marathon, and I do it in 2 hours and 42 minutes.
Damn, God.
For not training, I just showed up and I did it, and after that, honestly, it took that to like get me like really to get back running. Because even when I was in the middle of my surgeries and stuff, I tried to try out for this soccer team, and then I had surgery, and then it pushed me back, and then it pushed me back, and then I only went to like 1 game, 2 games, and then surgeries pushed me back, and then I was being trained to run in the Paralympics as a track runner, and then that's when I started getting surgeries in my mouth, and then I got an infection in my arm, and so obviously like it kept like pushing
Right,
me
things
back.
were
Well,
happening.
like during these recoveries, like I keep doing things for myself, and it keeps pushing me back, and so I finally run that half marathon, and I'm like, hell yeah, like it makes me feel good, and you know, um, my wife's running it with me. A lot of the amputees are running it, that I'm meeting too, and it's cool, and
Yeah.
that's when I get into the next year where we run it again, and I run all three: the 5K, 10K, and the half marathon, and back to back days, and
Damn, dude.
I remember. Yeah, that was in 2016, and that's when I started playing soccer and all this stuff, and I started playing soccer for a Temecula league here, and I'm obviously the only crippled dude playing with a bunch of regular able-bodied dudes, and
At least you don't
and
need
all I
one shin
told the
guard,
league,
you know?
yeah, cost efficiency.
It's a
I mean, but
plus
then
for
again,
sure.
when it came to buying cleats, obviously you gotta buy two. So I mean, I didn't know what to do with the left one,
Yeah, that's true.
but I told the lady, I'm like, hey, like I just want to play. Like, I don't want you guys to take it easy on me. I don't want no like publicity on like here we
Sure.
go, you want to be the guy stand, whatever. So I just want to play. And then
Right.
so I played for that league for almost 2 years, and like every team that we ever played, they were always like back up, like, oh, let him score, let him do the what's that the wish, like let grant his wish of
I
like
get what you're
scoring and
saying.
whatever.
Yeah, I get what you're
I'm
saying.
like, fool. I'm like, nah, fool. I'm like, come at me.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I want to beat you at your best. Like if I beat you, like cool. Like this is you beating me.
Yeah.
If you beat me, you beat me. If not, then
Yeah.
cool. Like I just want to be looked at as equal.
Yeah.
And again, like what we were saying, like when you were saying like a bunch of amputees kill it, like no, like it's just us being us. Like we just want to be us. We just want to be treated the same. Like, oh shit,
Yeah.
missing arm and leg. Hey, like Javier again when he first met me. Hey man, you need help? Hey, what's up? You crippled? Like no, like I could get my own ball. Like
Yeah.
I can do all this. Like I got it. I'm good. Like we just want to be looked at as equal
Yeah.
instead of like growing up you're like, oh, está malito, don't look at him, or like,
Yeah.
oh, this and that. It's not respectful to look at him. Like I'd rather people ask me and educate them, than not. Like obviously a lot of people don't like hearing like, oh, there I was, blood and guts everywhere. Like I
Yeah.
get it. And obviously I go according to age limits on like, oh, I was a soldier far away, I got injured, and
Right.
whoever I come across and whatever. And again in soccer, I wanted to be normal.
Yeah.
I just wanted to run and play soccer, and here I am running half marathons and playing soccer. And then again, my wife and I already had our firstborn, Giovanni, and um, they were over there when he was old enough to go watch me play because it was cold over there. They'd watch me play and stuff, and then so it felt good. Obviously, I had my dog there, Bella. She was there with me through a lot of my surgeries. A lot of people were like, "Oh, you have dogs. You dogs this, dogs that. They're just dogs." And I'm like, honestly, in my darkest days, my dog has saved my life. My dogs like were there for me. Like even when my wife would be at work and stuff, like my dog would be right there and shit, like
Yeah.
laying next to me, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm over here like, oh, like crying and stuff next to my dog, and I'm like, so
Yeah,
like,
I
yeah,
I actually want to ask you something. Like, it's backtracking a little bit, but when you first got out of the service, obviously your experience was a little bit different than a lot of people. But what would you say was like some of the most difficult challenges that you faced while transitioning back into this sort of world? I'm sure one of them was like, what the fuck am I gonna do now? You know, like
yeah, honestly, yeah, that's what it was. Like to me, I was always the person that needed to keep busy. My family growing up, like we always kept busy. We were always moving. We were always doing things.
yeah,
We were always working. We were always like if you're sitting down, you're lazy kind of thing. Like if you're like you ain't right if you're sitting, so you got to be doing something. So that's where I was telling you I would volunteer here and there, and I worked for a little while to get out of the house and just to feel normal again. And that's where again like it was obviously weird because here I am, a disabled person missing an arm and a leg, and
yeah,
even with service members that I would meet, they're like, oh yeah, like um I'm still in this and that, and obviously like it again at Balboa, like it kind of sucked obviously hearing like these dudes that are faking their way out or doing all this, like asking me how they can get 100% and stuff just to sham their way out,
yeah.
to get
I can't
ahead. And
believe
I'm like,
they, I can't believe they asked you that.
you're asking me missing an arm and a leg and all these other amputees that get asked that and all that, and I'm like, dude, like we're trying to stay in, like we're over here trying to fight, to get back, and they're telling us we physically can't because obviously we're over here missing limbs.
Yeah,
I remember when I was like, I want to stay in as a scout, and they're like, no, like you gotta reclass it. Well, for one, you'll never deploy again, and two, you can't be a scout. And I'm like, all right, sign my papers. I'm out. I can't do this. And they're like, well, why not? Like you'll never deploy, man. You'll push papers and blah blah blah. You can stay in. And I'm like, you think if I wanted to do that, I would have done that from the beginning?
yeah,
And so that's why I'm like, sign my papers, take me out. I'm out. Like that's all I wanted. I wanted to be a soldier, and obviously if I can't soldier, then I'm out.
right,
That's how I looked at it as like if you're gonna go to work, give it your best. Like again, like I wanted to be like I wanted to be like that. Like give it your best, and I did, and that's why I'm like, all right, cool. Like if I can't give my best, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just be in the back burner. I'll just be a janitor then, for the military now. Instead of
yeah,
doing what I was doing. And again, that's where I started picking up running and stuff like that, and I started realizing that it was helping other veterans too.
mm-hmm.
And I was slowly, little by little, like, damn, dude, like you're missing an arm and leg, you're running. Obviously, the guys that were going through mental health, PTSD, stuff like that, the organization that I got my service dog through. Again, they were PTSD, MSTs, and stuff like that, and um, like there I was, me and this other guy that were amputees, and and it was obviously different. Everybody
Yeah,
was looking at us differently, and again, we could have used that excuse of leave us alone. We're missing limb, like again, everybody wants to say Forrest Gump, like
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dan, like again, a lot of guys took it that way, and again, he had no excuse. He had every excuse, I guess I should say, to be whoever he wanted to be. Like I could again, like I could be pissed off. I could have been pissed off at the world and all that, but who would want to be around somebody like that? I was always pissy or sad or mopey or
Yeah.
regardless of the approach that I would have taken, like sad, mopey, mad, whatever. Like like eventually everybody's like, all right, this dude's too crazy, or like, hey man, this dude, like you
It
push him
wouldn't it
off,
wouldn't
like
change the situation. You know what I mean? If anything,
exactly.
it would worsen the situation because it would probably affect your mental health a little bit more, and it'd probably fucking get you going, and it would just take you in a fucking darker cycle instead of like what you're doing here is like, you see yourself fucking doing half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks. Like I'm sure
And
all those goals that you set for yourself, not only help you and your mental health, but I'm sure like you doing all that shit, I think you're setting a great fucking example for other vets, not only amputees, but just other veterans in general who are struggling with like PTSD or any sort of mental health. I think what you're doing is a fucking awesome example to everybody else, man. Honestly.
and again when I was thank you. And again when I was getting off those medications, honestly, it took me to be disgusted, legit disgusted with myself. Like, who the hell is this guy? Like, who the hell is this mopey around dude? Like, sadness and like Cloudy McGee over here. Like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I need to go back to the guy that I was like before I got blown up. The smart ass jokester dude that like that everybody wanted to punch in the face when stuff got hard. Like when
Yeah.
stuff got hard, I would laugh. I'm like, dude, what are you mad about? Like, what can you fix? Like
Yeah.
we
It fucking
gotta get it.
sucks. You know?
Yeah, we gotta get it. Take a seat and get comfortable, man.
Yeah.
And again, that's why again I got disgusted with myself, and I got off my medications, and you know uh again, my wife and I had our firstborn, and uh, our firstborn Giovanni,
Mm-hmm.
and it was cool. It was we started doing things like that, and obviously we had our ups and downs too, and
Of course.
and then I remember my partner he would only call me usually like around the day we got blown up, uh, or every now and then, when he like kind of felt like it.
Yeah.
And I invited him to everything. I invited him to my wedding. I tried to keep in contact. I would call him, text him. And it would always be, whenever he wanted to. So I'd always drop whatever he was doing, and um, I remember like uh, he started calling me all of a sudden, like a lot, like FaceTiming me, texting me, and I'm like, hey man, what's up? And he's like, hey, how you been? Whatever, blah blah. I'm like, good man, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm going. After a couple phone calls, he's like, oh, I'm going to counseling finally. And the therapist, told me to talk to you, to help me get through some of my stuff, because I hold a lot of what happened to you and all that. And my girl left me and all that, and I'm like, well, fuck that, you always got me, shit. And I'm like, obviously trying to get his head right. I'm like, yeah, I'm in be lay naked next to you. I'm like, but I'll be there for you, man.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm always here. And every time he called me, man, I always dropped whatever the hell I was doing. You
That's
know,
awesome, dude.
um, and uh, yeah, it was cool. And then I remember he called me. He called me, and then like I just see like him very distraught, very and I just told him like, hey man, like let it go, man. Like I'm here for you, and like you have all of us, and you have all your buddies, you have me, you have everybody and all that, and
Basically, like nothing is held against him. Like everything was just gonna happen
yeah,
regardless. Like it wasn't anybody's fault. We were there to do a thing, and things happen. It's nobody's fault at the end of the day, man. shit fucking goes
Yeah,
down.
and then again, I talked to him Thursday, and then he commits suicide on Tuesday. He commits suicide on Tuesday, the Thursday after I talked to him, and I remember it was the day after Memorial Day that year, and it was crazy because the American Legion had never asked me to do a speech for Memorial Day, and I did a poem by Tecumseh, um, like the fear of death, and I said that and all that, and that was that Monday, and then obviously he commits suicide. He commits suicide Tuesday, and I remember Wednesday morning, I see my phone like I do every morning, see what time it is, and I see my medic text me, and he was like, "Hey, call me when you get this." And I'm like, "Shit." He just had his kid not too long ago, So I was like, "Oh shit," Obviously, like I was thinking about his kid, and he's like, "Hey man, you good?" I'm like, "What happened, doc? Like, what the hell?" Like, And he was like, "Well, Become committed suicide." And I'm like, "No, you didn't." And he was like, "Yeah, you did." And I'm like, "All right, doc. Like, I love you. I'm like, I love you. I'll let you go." And he was like, "You good, Q?" And I'm like, "Yeah, doc." I'm like, I'm good, dude." I'm like, "I promise you I'm good. I just need some time." And then I remember my wife, she just sees me like, she sees this look in my eye, and she's like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "Become committed suicide." And yeah, dude, it was, still is, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, what we call our live day is coming up on Monday on the 30th, and it would have been 9 years. That would have, you know, and again, like obviously, suicide is a topic a lot of people don't want to talk about,
A lot of people don't, man.
and again, again, I respect people's opinions and all that, and all that, but it's something that should be talked about,
Should be.
and again, like all this machismo-ness, again, I told you how he was, smart ass, whatever, like me and all that, and he, believe me, he was, fact, he was a smart ass asshole, man, believe me, and so was I, and so am I, and 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 yeah, he committed suicide, and then my wife was like, what do you want to do?" Like, and I'm like, "Well, we're going to his service, like I got to be there." And obviously, like with me and him throughout the last 4 months, we were talking about like where we would go for our 10-year anniversary, which obviously is next year, and all that, and like, so now I'm finally going over there to his house, and I just told my wife, I'm like, I just know it's going to be hard for his family to obviously see me again, because obviously the last time we saw each other, we were both on the brink of life and death here, and so we go to Oklahoma, and we go to a service, and I remember his family was like, "Well, can you drive his truck to the service?" And I'm like, "It would be my honor to drive his truck." And I slept in his room. I slept in his room. I slept in his bed. I wanted to feel there, like if he was there, like
Yeah, the energy.
like if he was inviting me, to be there. And his mom was the one that asked me, like, "Hey, if you don't mind sleeping in his room, like, go ahead and sleep in his room." I'm like, "Oh yeah," like, and I remember seeing his two dogs there because he had two labs, and he would always make fun of me because I had like Yorkies and stuff. And he's like, "I'll get you some real dogs," and I'm like, "But my dog can fetch. My dog can fetch. Yours can't," because his dogs couldn't fetch to save their lives apparently. And
Yeah.
so I finally got to meet those dogs, and and it was crazy. And then obviously that happening, and came back home, and I remember my brother-in-law. Obviously, again, suicide's a touchy subject with a lot of people, so everybody was just like, "Well, just make sure we're here. Like, just make sure like you don't do this. Make sure you don't hurt you." I'm like, dude, like what? Like, it's
Yeah.
not, like I don't want to hear that right now. Like, and so,
Yeah.
that's when my brother-in-law sits me down, and obviously he's like, dude, I never talked to you like this. Like we're two old soldiers, two ex-soldiers, and like, I'm here for you, and obviously I get it, and I do, and he tells me his stories, and he's like, I was looked at as the crazy one, and like, and just know that I'm here for you, and I'm proud of you. And I'm like, shit, and look at all what you've done, being an amputee and all that, and just remember your homie like I remember mine. And I'm like, remember your brother. Sorry, word it differently. Uh, Remember your brother like I did mine. And yeah, like obviously that happens, and um, I remember my old commander, my old lieutenant, and a couple buddies show up to his service, and I remember my old commander was like, "Hey, like small talking it up, like what you got going on? Are you still running?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, I have a run in September." So he's like, "Hey, try to get me signed up. I'll come to California from Tennessee.
Yeah.
I'll come to California to run with you." I'm like, "All right, sir." Like, so here we go. Like, it was crazy because Homes for Our Troops had asked me back in January, like, "Hey, dude, like we see you running and playing soccer. Is it cool if we like make a video of you? Since you're doing these things." I'm like, "Yeah, it's cool. We'll record you in September for your run." This was in January. My partner committed suicide in May. Um, and then here comes that run, and I'm like, "Yeah, my old commander's coming." Like, now I'm more for it. I'm more like, no, fuck that. Like I wanna run this race, and my commander's coming, and they're gonna make a video of me,
Yeah.
and it just so happened to fall in line like this again. Like I didn't ask them to, like, and yeah, Homes for Our Troops did like a black ribbon for my partner because he got a house from them too, and so they knew him and they knew me and they knew us because of each other,
Yeah.
or they knew our stories because our stories matched each other, and we talked about each other. And so when that run happened, like they gave everybody the black ribbons or whatever, and my family was there running, and my brother, my sister, my brother-in-law, my nephew, my wife, like everybody was running that run, and they had, everybody's been running those runs, because of, supporting, Homes for Our Troops. And there's my commander when he comes, man, and we meet up at the bar right there somewhere in Disneyland, and we have some drinks, and then like we're like, hey, we're gonna run a half marathon, and I meet his wife, and she's like, are you guys sure you guys are gonna run, like, tomorrow? You guys are drinking tonight, we're
They don't
like,
know,
yeah,
man. They don't
like,
know.
yeah, like, yeah, we got it. and
Yeah.
and sure enough, man, there goes me and my commander, like running that half marathon. And again, he was our first commander that was there the first half of the deployment. And so obviously he remembers both of us. And this fool, man, me and Picone were the fastest ones in our troop running when we were in the peak, when we had all our limbs. And this fool still beat us both. He beat everybody in our troop because of how fast he was. And he was old as shit. Like I always called him Clint Eastwood, because of how old he
Yeah.
was. But I called him a gazelle because of how fast he ran.
Yeah.
And so there I was again, that PT test. I was running my best, like the last 200 yards, and there he is, like running my fastest, and there he is, like passing me. And I'm like, what the hell? So, anyways, we're at that run, and he's just like, oh, let's do it for Picon, man. Like, and he could like, come on, Q. Like every time I adjusted my leg or something, it was just like, come on, Q, let's get it. And I'm like, all right. And it was obviously an emotional run because that's all
Of
you thought
course.
about, and yeah, there was my commander, and I'm like, shit, dude, we did it, and there was my family, and it was a good time, and I say back in 2017, and again looking forward. I've gotten my degree in psychology. Um, Actually, when my partner committed suicide, I had a 2 week break, which was kind of weird because I was doing those like every 5 week classes,
Yeah.
and I never got a break, obviously, because as soon as 1 week finished, the next Thursday or whatever, they would start again a new class, and then I had a 2 week break because I was starting my core classes, my psychology classes, and that was when he committed suicide, and I was thinking, I'm like, well, fuck, do I drop out? Like, what the fuck? Like, what, And I'm like, nah, I got this, and then that's when I started doing all my psychology classes and all that, and really like
Damn.
getting to know like
Dig a little deeper.
the book
Yeah.
stuff, basic book stuff, I guess, of psychology. And obviously, I did it as a patient, and I did it as my own personal views, I guess, and here I am reading it in books and relating it to everything, cultural norms, childhood, deployment, environmental norms, like everything. Like I was putting all my therapy into this bowl. And school, and again, school, I learned a lot. I learned a little bit. I learned, and I was just like, no, I'm gonna go at it, doing this,
Yeah.
and I got my degree, luckily, short after that, and um, now my wife and I have 3 kids now, and um, and I do what I can again to help veterans in a non obviously professional platform because I can't do that. Um, I again, what I was telling you, I don't like being sad. I don't like being mad. I don't like being angry. I like
Yeah.
being not happy, but I like having a good time. I like BSing. I like shit talking. I like having a good time. Like I that's obviously everything I've ever been through, and then some. Like a lot of people obviously looking in is like, oh, well, how can you live like that? How can you? And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to be me, and like
Yeah. I mean, how can you try not to? How
as
can you
long
try
as I'm,
not to?
as long as I'm not doing crack and wearing deodorant and taking showers, and I think you don't have to worry, like,
Yeah.
like again, my neighbor Ken, and I know he's probably gonna kill me when he sees this. Like he uh throughout the last like 3 years, we've been pretty good friends and stuff. And I remember like honestly him now like us playing golf and stuff together. Like I remember I'm like, oh fuck that. Like dude, I'm like, dude, I didn't play golf with all my limbs. Like how am I gonna play golf?
Yeah.
And I participated in a lot of golf tournaments, with this Gold Star dad too that I became really close friends with. He lost his son back in 2012, and we've been very good friends. And anyways, I participated in a lot of golf tournaments, and I never played. I never played, and so my neighbor was like, "Let's go golfing." And I'm like, "Dude, I suck." And he's like, "Well, so do we. If you're a professional, you're gonna be playing with us."
Yeah.
So now, like, I get out of the house, by playing golf and showing my kids how to off road. Um they ride a quad. They're gonna be riding a dirt bike here pretty soon, I have a razor that I take them out on, and I these are all the things that I couldn't even imagine as a child.
Yeah.
Because my brother and I always wanted like off-road vehicles, but we could never afford those, or never had the luxury of having those. And yeah, now having these things, like I that's like it's awesome being able to see the kids enjoying that and loving that,
Yeah.
and wanting more, like, oh, like let's do bigger jumps, let's go faster. And I'm like, dude, you need to slow your roll, dude. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are barely little kids, and again, I have 6 dogs, 2 bunnies, a pony, and and again, it's I've lived more life as an amputee than I did before. I attended first games to, football games, basketball games, baseball games.
Yeah.
I never did professional, and I never did any of that before, and I've never ran competitive, or not competitively, but I've never ran 5Ks, 10Ks, and a half marathons for a damn medal.
Yeah.
Everybody's paying, all this money for a damn medal. I'm like, what the hell? Like no, like I never did any of that. I played soccer in high school and stuff like that, but I'm like, I loved running. I always loved. I ran for fun, and and I've had a lot of opportunities presented to me because of this. I've met a lot of great people, um, from being an amputee. I've From what people have messaged me or I have talked to, I have came across a lot of other people that even just seeing me, or like hearing my story, or even whatever, has helped them. And and again, like it again, a lot of people will consider me or my personality as immature, or like, oh, you haven't grown up yet, or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to live, man. I just
Yeah.
literally want to live. Like, I want to live life, enjoy life. Like, I just, yeah, I want to live. Like, I want to enjoy the greatness in life. Like,
Yeah.
I would have never thought I'd be playing golf. I never thought I'd be, riding quads and razors and all that. And
Coming on a podcast,
yeah, yeah, my first podcast over here and stuff. Like it, clearly very professional over here.
You already know.
Um, yeah, I've had a lot of opportunities presented to me and that I wouldn't have, and yeah, like it again, like all I wanted to do was be a soldier, and that's
Yeah.
all. That's all I ever wanted, and all I ever knew. And like, I remember my mom back the first time I called home and I talked to her, and she's like, "How is it over there, mijo?" I'm like, "Mom, you've been training me for the army my whole life, like." Like,
Oh
and
yeah.
she was like, "Oh my God," and I'm like, "No, for real, mom." Like, and I'm like, my brother and I would always like make our little half-ass tents and stuff outside in the front yard and stuff, like with our own blankets, and like what the hell? Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Um, but no, like yeah. Now again, like, not that I ever not appreciated living my life, because even in Afghanistan, when some of my guys would be like, "Oh, it makes you appreciate a working toilet. It makes you appreciate a working toilet." I'm like, it literally takes for you to see somebody in a worse condition than you are to appreciate a working toilet.
I just think it's not something that's at the forefront of everybody's mind.
And I'm
Think about people here in the States, man. Think about people here. People complain about the
all I
slightest
know,
things
all
here.
I know. Believe me,
You know.
I'm first generation Mexican American. Like,
Same
believe
here,
me.
man.
My parents were born over there. Were born in Mexico, and my sister was born in Mexico, and my brother and I were born here. And again, obviously I grew up in a very, very Mexican Hispanic culture, and obviously getting blown up and meeting the world and going into the army and meeting people, and
Yeah.
I see literally everybody, almost everybody's side. I may not see their shoe be in their shoes. I'm like, but I see at least the Mexican American side. You know, like you can tell, like why are we intimidated by these people? Like why are we intimidated by white people? Why are, you know, like everybody's bullshitting the same anyways. Like
Yeah.
everybody's like, you know, we're all just people. Again, we're all just people. Like, you know, like
Yeah.
yeah, like, you know, again, yeah, obviously that's a different conversation, but you can edit all that out. But
No, I mean that's what's going on right now with the country, man. There's a lot of separation going on, and I think we do need a little bit more of like, hey, we're all just fucking here trying to get along, you know, trying to get through every fucking day like everybody else, you know.
oh
Um,
yeah, we are, man. Again, my family started off as orange pickers in Fresno Tulare County, and they opened their restaurant in Cutler, and luckily my they've had they've had from a total of four family owned Mexican restaurants, and one of them that I grew up working for, and some of my uncles grew up to be police officers, entrepreneurs, and doing their own business, and again, they'll tell you themselves that they're appreciative of the opportunities that they've had here in America. Obviously, in America, and opportunities that they wouldn't have in Mexico. You know, and obviously, everybody comes here for a better life,
yeah,
and it's given my family the opportunity to be that, and obviously, it gave me the opportunity coming from Cutler, California. Obviously, Tulare County / Fresno County. Like there really ain't nothing over there, man.
yeah.
And again, it's opportunities. It's it's choices.
People take it
It's
for
choice.
granted. People take this
It's
place for granted for sure.
it's choices you make. Again, like if you want to talk about choices, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for choices. My life would definitely be different if I wouldn't have chose to do that. And again, it's chose to do this, chose to do that. Obviously, what ifs, and whatnots. Like
Yeah,
I was what ifing it a lot. Like at first throughout my recovery, and now it's like, well, you know, or even back then, I'm like, well, shit, that shit didn't happen. This happened. That didn't happen. Well, this happened.
yeah,
You know, and it's like, well, what if when people are like, well, what if this happened? What if I'm like, well, it didn't. Like we're still here. Like this is what's happening. Like, well, what if? Well, that's not happening. Like you know, so
right. So
again,
I guess I got one more question for the both of y'all. Um, for people, you know, some of our brothers and sisters, you know, who served and currently are still serving, who are potentially dealing with any challenges or any struggles, you know, mental health or whether it may be, and are potentially contemplating suicide or, you know, are on a dark path. What would you say worked for you whenever you were struggling with it, or would you say that you know somebody that was dealing with it that it worked for them? What's something that you would recommend them do, or something that potentially worked for you?
honestly, I've been going through the vet center for years now, consistently, like 5 years, 6 years in. And it honestly took a lot of like swallowing your pride, swallowing everything that you ever thought of to like actually like admit that something's wrong with you. Like it took me a lot of stuff to finally like, no, like this needs to get addressed. This needs to get addressed. Childhood things, service things, um, surgery things, medication things. Like I don't right now. Like it's it's literally like really talking about it, really getting down to the neat and greedy, like dirty, you know, the dirty stuff that you don't want to talk about. But again, you can't help those that don't want to be helped.
Yeah.
It's hard. Like I've had a buddy blame me for his drug use and his all, well, what happened to you messed me up, that's why I do this. And I'm like, what? Like, and I'm like, why? Because
Damn.
of me. Like, dude, I'm like, dude, like, when am I gonna hear you say some good stuff? When am I gonna hear you like, I'm doing this, man, I'm doing that? Like, I get we
Yeah.
all go through our rough patches. I'm like, but eventually, when is it gonna get better? Like, and
You're trying to say like
and
nobody will do it for you. You have to, you
yeah,
know.
you honestly got to dig down and literally be disgusted with yourself, because I guess that's what worked for me,
Yeah.
and that's what worked for a lot of guys. Where you gotta like, who the hell is this guy? Like, who? Like, you need to be disgusted with yourself, and like, no, man, like I can't keep putting people through this. I can't keep, like doing that. I guess obviously I'm far from perfect. Obviously, I still have my flaws and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I have gone through a lot of obstacles and a lot of dark paths, and a lot of things that obviously I'm like, dude, is this gonna keep happening? Is there's gonna be no end? Like, is there's no
Yeah.
light on this damn tunnel? But again, it's perception. It's literally like, you see a flat tire, like, you're gonna fix it, or you're gonna leave it flat. Like like, and obviously it may take you forever to figure it out, to get it back to having air. But hey, like,
As long as you're working on it, right? Not just fucking
yeah,
staring at it and hoping somebody does it for you, or just feeling sorry about it. I think you gotta dig deep and push forward and take those steps, even if they're small steps. As long as you're taking some steps forward, talking to your homies, you talking to your brothers, reaching out. I know that's what worked for me when I was in my own mind.
yeah. Again, the mind plays a hell of a trick, man, on people. And again, obviously, all these cliche phrases like, "You are your worst enemy, man." You are literally what you think. You want to keep feeling sorry for yourself. You want to keep feeling pity. You want to keep like, well, I'm in pain. I'm this. I'm that. Like, all right, well, all right, cool. Like, you will fall into that. That is a thing. That is a neurological disorder. That is you can physically make yourself sick. You can,
Sick. Yeah.
and again, man, like, do the things that make you happy. Like, do the things that you used to do when you were happy. If you want to, that's what I did. That's like running and soccer. Like, I started there. Like, I want to run and play soccer. Like, and and I would say do that. Obviously, everybody's got their different obstacles. Everybody's got their different ways of dealing with things.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their own way of dealing with and trauma and experiences and whatever. As long as clearly you keep pushing forward, and like, don't look back at what you have accomplished. Don't go back. Is what I'm trying to say. Like, like, like what they say, two steps forward, one step back. Well, look at that one step back and like, all right, well, I already been there. Like, no, I'm
Yeah.
good.
Learn from that and just keep going forward.
And again, there's some traumas that you can't overcome, and I've learned that from talking to Gold Star families, people that have lost people, and like myself, obviously, and my trauma and all that. Like, there's some traumas that you can't overcome, and you got to be okay with that. And you got to be, looking at it optimistic, like glass half full, half empty at the situation. Like, again, everybody recovers from things differently. Like,
Yeah.
you have your own way of dealing with pain. I have my own way of dealing with pain. Like, it's just, obviously, that's who we are as people, and that's
Yeah.
who we're gonna be. We can't change people as much as we can, obviously, or as much as we want to. Believe me. Um, and all I say again with your question, suck up your pride and seek help, and really get into what's really bothering you, what's really like in there, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna bring back that rug that you threw everything underneath, and it ain't weakness for you to be talking about it. It ain't making you less of a man or less of a woman. You bringing up this experience, because that's how you get over things.
Yeah.
That's really how you get over things, like exposure therapy, talking about it, being there for other people, being there for yourself, being, other people being there for you, like people in every different stage of recovery. Um, again, I've had great talks with that Gold Star dad that I tell you about losing his son, and he had a great talk, with my brother and I and stuff like that, and made you look at it, in a different light. Even with my wife and I, his wife and him, like you just, it's just different, and obviously our lives are different, and
Yeah.
nobody will understand, and a lot of it is not wanting them, not that they're like,
That
oh
they
yeah,
should,
I
right?
get it, and like, no,
Yeah.
you don't. No, you don't. But again, like, it's not their fault, because again, like, obviously this is all part of it. This is like, it's hard to make people understand and feel the way you do and all this and that. You can say their story, you can watch a movie and feel that emotion for that movie, and after that
That's it.
they,
Yeah.
they just get over it, or like, oh yeah, cool, like that was a sad movie, or like, oh, this was sad, and like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm moving on and honking at people in traffic and all this. um but again, it's what sticks to the rib. It's what again, I try to, when I talk, obviously it's my first podcast, but
Yeah.
when I talk to you and regular people, I try to use my personality for everything. Like, I can add some hurt, I can add some funny stuff, I can add
Mm-hmm.
some everything into the mix, some relating, some cultural stuff, some work stuff, like everything.
Yeah.
And the Mexican American, the first generation, everything. And that's what, I guess, everybody's got their own story to tell.
Yep.
And
That's right.
again, their story, even though no matter what, will help somebody out. Because obviously everybody's experienced a different life.
That's the whole point of
Other,
this, man. That's the whole point of this is getting different stories and different experiences, and how you dealt with it differently than Sanchez did, and then how I dealt with it, and how I overcame my shit, and how you overcame your shit, and how that could potentially help somebody who is dealing with the same shit that you were dealing with or similar shit, and maybe they could see this in the future, right? And they're like, oh, this is what this motherfucker did. This is what I could do, right? Maybe I'll try that. Like, this isn't working for me. Maybe I'll go run fucking half a marathon. Like, things like that. And that's what I'm trying to do with this. Like, I'm trying to I'm trying to get different experiences and different stories, and I'm hoping that if somebody is watching this and that they are struggling with something similar that we've dealt with, or and they could potentially get something out of it.
honestly, again, like, go back to that happy moment in your life, man. Like, on who you were individually, and like, not who you are, as a husband, as a brother, as whatever, like who you are personally. Like, go back to that, like when you were happy before medication, before the trauma, before this. Like, go back to that, and like, what made you happy then? Even then, if life sucked back then, like, what were you doing to get over it? Like, you were running, you were playing soccer,
Yeah.
you were doing the thing, you were crafting, you were riding dirt bikes, whatever. Everybody's life is different, like, in a healthy way. Clearly, I'm not saying go do some,
Right. Yeah.
some
Yeah.
crack and all this, but
Yeah.
um, like, again, and even then, to those people that do that, like, I've known a lot of people that have recovered and pushed on, and again, share their story to help others, and like, well, this is who I was, and this took over my life, and this did that, and again, it's trauma. Again, it's something that we're going through. It was our rough patch. Call it whatever you want. Like everybody
Yeah.
calls their thing different. Like, but they took it. They took it and like, well, this ain't gonna get the best of me. Like it's cheesy, but you're really never out of the fight.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
that's not
and
cheesy,
a lot
man.
of,
That's real.
you know, why say something? You know, why say something negative? You know, and
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get your 2 cents on like what you recommended for people, and what worked for you, and I'm sure this will definitely help whoever sees it if they're going through their own challenges. Sanchez, do you want to? How does first sergeant say after, or how does a sergeant major say after the CO? Do you want to pony
Anything to piggyback off?
anything you want to piggyback off?
No, man, just like how you were asking earlier, like what advice I would have to people who are reaching out to seek help and stuff is that you're not the first person to go through it. Somebody else has gone through, the same thing or something very similar to what you have. So don't think that you're some isolated incident. And also, if you do seek help, then the next time you have someone coming to you for help, you'll already know exactly where to send them and how to help them the best, since you've done it before. So that's always a good thing to have. So not only are you doing it for yourself, but you're doing it for somebody else in the future too. That's
Definitely.
what I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're passing on the help that obviously aided you during your own circumstances, and I think you're just being another helping hand to keep that good shit going.
Cycle going, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we need a little bit more of that, instead of just being that veteran community or that macho male community that's like, stop being a pussy or stop doing this, but it's more like, yo, let's fucking go, let's keep going forward, and
Yeah.
let's keep doing things. Well, guys, this is definitely the longest podcast I've done, and there's it's fucking
shit, sorry.
no, bro, no, nothing to apologize.
Telling you, I can talk, dude. I
No.
can talk, and we can spin it pretty 100 ways, man. Believe me.
Yo,
Man,
no,
imagine
no,
if you had some chelas,
And
man. We'd be here till 2 in the morning.
That's just me fast forwarding a bunch of shit too.
I know, and I want hey, man, this is cool. This, I really
But if you
enjoyed it.
if you have any, yeah, you need to go to sleep because you guys got work.
Sanchez,
and shit,
we'll have to get you on here, separately as well. But yeah, man, thank you for obviously everything that you've done, and no, it's not the most normal thing to hear, but thank you for fucking doing what you've done, and just we appreciate you still being here with everything that you've been to, obviously, and I know it's not easy, but you're fucking killing it, like I was saying earlier, and I'm sure everybody else appreciates listening to your story and your experiences, and how you over